Chapter 238. After returning to the office, Roland immediately began to draw the new machinery. During the days when the First Army and the witches went to King's City, Roland was not idle. On the contrary, Roland felt that he was even busier than usual. Even when Nightingale was not by his side, the time he spent alone with Anna was also very little. In addition to settling the refugees who had been transported by the ships, he also let Anna and Lucia test the composition of the smelting products, as well as build a new smelting furnace. In the past, whether it was smelting iron or steel, he purely relied on his experience and intuition to carry out the smelting process, and in the end, he did not know what the composition was. Now, with Lucia's help, Roland finally had a method to accurately determine the composition of a metal ingot. With the ability to decompose matter, he could repeatedly compare and obtain the required detailed data for smelting, such as the stirring time after melting, the specific amount of charcoal added, and whether or not to add limestone and other additives to remove sulfur and phosphorus, or to add other metal raw materials to obtain the alloy, and so on. Based on these data, Roland was able to summarize the standardized smelting process, in order to obtain the same quality of iron ingots or steel after repeated production, and at the same time, to dispel the fog of material science and technology little by little. And the new smelting furnace was also built for this purpose. It was a square furnace with a length and width of 4 meters and a height of 2 meters, with the bottom sloping towards one end. The thick outer shell was made of cast iron, and the inner layer was covered with clay bricks, as well as Soroya's mud coating, which had excellent heat resistance. The lowest end was equipped with a movable gate, which was pulled by a steam engine. Considering that those advanced heating methods, such as oxygen blowing, electric arc, and so on, did not have the conditions to implement, the furnace was simply not equipped with any combustion device, and completely relied on Anna's black fire to smelt the molten steel. After adding raw materials according to the tested proportion and smelting, the molten steel was directly discharged from the rear gate. The furnace could produce about 50 tons of molten steel at a time, and Anna only needed a short quarter of an hour to complete the smelting process. Adding the feeding and tapping time, it only took about half an hour, and the output was basically enough to meet the current production of firearms and cannons. The current smelting mode in Border Town was that the blast furnaces and shaft furnaces were responsible for producing a large amount of pig iron, which could be used to manufacture daily ironware and steam engines, and could also be used as raw materials for further smelting in iron furnaces to produce wrought iron or steel. The blueprint that Roland was currently drawing was a set of production equipment for bullet stamping. With a stable and reliable source of steel, the stamping machinery's processing and assembly would no longer have hardware difficulties. The success of the trial production of mercury fulminate made the mass production of the new bullets even more urgent. Although Anna's black fire cutting was efficient and accurate, it would still take a long time for one person to complete the entire process. If the stamping assembly line was put into production, more than 30 ordinary people could operate it after training. At least 10,000 bullets could be produced in a day, and the soldiers would no longer need to manually reload the ammunition. After dinner, he spent a long time drawing. It wasn't until the midnight bell rang outside the window that he had a rough idea of what to do with his sketches. Of course, this was only the most preliminary concept design. He didn't know if some of the details were feasible. He still needed to test it before he could make a final decision. Normally, Roland would have yawned, but today he was in high spirits and didn't feel sleepy at all. After putting away more than 10 pieces of draft paper, he took out the parchment attached to Princess Tilly's letter from the drawer and spread it out on the table. Finally, the long-awaited part of selecting the visiting witches had arrived. The list listed the abilities of more than 60 auxiliary witches. According to Maggie, the total number of witches on Sleeping Island should be around 200 to 300. Obviously, Tilly didn't list all the auxiliary witches' abilities on the list. This was also in line with a leader's approach, to take the initiative to extend a hand of friendship, rather than to put everything on the table. For the other party to do this, it was enough to show their sincerity in forming an alliance. Roland replaced a new candle and concentrated on looking at the witches' abilities on the appendix. He had to say that this was a very difficult choice to make. After many comparisons, he decided on a list of 5 visitors. Then Roland spread out a piece of parchment and began to write a reply. Dear sister, I'm very happy to see your letter. I'm very excited and gratified by the decision you made. With your help, I have a greater chance of blocking the church's attack. The reason I can gain the witch's trust and support is also because of this. In the entire continent of Greycastle, only Border Town has completely erased the influence of the church. The natives not only accept the witches, but even fight side by side with them. From resisting the demonic beasts to fighting against the church, my people and the witches have formed an inseparable whole. Now, everywhere in Border Town, you can see them participating in the construction. The steam engine that made you curious was also realized with the help of the witches. This is a good sign, and what I want to do is to spread this situation throughout the western region, until the whole kingdom. For this, I must destroy the entire church, turn the saying that witches are evil into dust, and save all the people from foolishness and ignorance. This is a long process, and I need more assistance from you. As for what made me make this decision, and what made me not be as indifferent to everything as I was in the past, these trifles can be slowly explained in detail when there is a chance. The content of this letter is limited, so I won't repeat it. As for the witch's visit next month, I am very much looking forward to it. Please do not worry about safety, I have planned a direct route for them to Border Town, completely avoiding the church's eyes and ears, and also without the need to rely on any port. The only risk lies in the navigation, but I think that with Maggie leading the way, the possibility of the ship getting lost is very small. I will attach a map of the specific route, and send it with Maggie to Sleeping Island. After these witches arrive in Border Town, they will naturally be able to participate in the basic knowledge classes. The so-called knowledge promotes the witch's ability to evolve. I am more inclined to say that a deeper understanding of the world has led to their transformation, whether it is nature, magic, or their own understanding. There is no doubt that with every witch whose ability has evolved, our odds of winning against the church will increase by 1 point. My view on this point is exactly the same as yours. Finally, I will list the 5 selected witches here, hoping to see them as soon as possible. Terrain Shaping Lotus. Status Maintaining Candle. Winemaker Evelyn. Beast Tamer Honey. And Eye of Truth Sylvie. Chapter 239. A week later, the First Army Expedition Team and the witches finally arrived in Border Town. From the day of departure, this mission had taken almost half a month, which was 5 days later than expected. The main reason was that when the fleet set foot on the way back, the Stronghold agent Perot Hull sent a messenger to report the cause of an unknown disease in Longsong Stronghold. Since Roland had already warned Perot, when the disease was discovered, he tried his best to take quarantine measures, completely closing off the entire urban area, and immediately sent a message to Border Town. After receiving the epidemic report, Roland let Maggie set off at top speed, along the Redwater River all the way to the east, looking for the fleet carrying the soldiers of the First Army, and then let them change their route to Longsong Stronghold at the fork of the Redwater River, and then return to Border Town after eliminating the demonic plague. Roland led the remaining members of the First Army and the families of the expedition team to the dock to welcome their smooth return. Accompanied by the familiar army march, the soldiers excitedly saluted the prince, many imitating the knight salute, kneeling down on one knee and shouting, "Long live the king!" After walking down the dock, they tightly embraced their loved ones, while Echo timely fired a gun salute. The atmosphere was unusually lively, attracting many serfs and fugitives to watch. After returning to the castle, Iron Axe gave a complete report of the mission. "You mean, there are witches among the enemies who attacked the First Army?" Roland thought for a moment. It is unlikely that they were sent by the rats. Theo also thinks so. He even thinks that the rats were also sent by other forces, otherwise this group of scum would rarely leave their nest. In King City, besides Timothy, only the church can control the rats and have witches. Iron Axe said, "Even those great nobles can't take out a bargaining chip that could make the largest local Blackstreet organization turn out in full force. But Timothy himself is in the eastern region, and daring to send witches to fight alone, I think the church is a bit more suspicious." Roland thought of the experience of Vendi and Ashes, and felt that it was not strange that the church had a group of secretly trained witches. Are you sure she's dead? She was hit in the chest by Nightingale, and her chest cavity was broken. Iron Axe nodded. We buried her in the wheat field, where we found the remains of the sentry soldier. On the last day, the team of 300 people had encountered a night attack by a large number of mice. In the end, 1 person died and 4 were injured. The only victim was killed by the enemy witches. The 4 wounded were all wounded by the crossbows of the enemies who managed to get close to them. The continuous fire from the revolving rifles ended the battle before it even reached the melee stage. The wounded were also properly bandaged. After returning to Border Town, they immediately received treatment from Nana. Because of Lily's existence, the wounds were almost never infected. As long as the crossbow didn't hit the vital organs, after the bleeding was stopped, the chances of the wounded surviving were extremely high. In general, Roland was very satisfied with the results of the First Army's first expedition. As for the possibility of someone sneaking into the sentries, he didn't know much about it. He only knew that it was necessary to set up sentries to monitor each other. As for the specifics, he would leave it to Iron Axe to figure out. Thank you for your hard work. Tomorrow, I will hold an award ceremony at the town's central square. Go and inform all the members of the First Army. After Iron Axe left, Roland let out a long sigh. You did a good job. He took out a bag of grilled fish from the drawer and put it on the table. If it weren't for you, I'm afraid they would have been in danger. Nightingale appeared and accepted the dried fish with a smile. Before we set off, I told you that I would take care of everything. How was the opponent's strength? She was agile and very decisive. She should have gone through several years of training. If I hadn't entered the mist at the same time she turned around and tried to resist, I might have been hit by the choking powder she threw. Nightingale shrugged and casually recounted the fight, but he knew that it all happened in a flash. I didn't want to kill her, but when I saw her stare at Vendi, I understood that nothing could stop her except death. Roland was silent for a moment. Do you remember what you said to me when we returned from Stronghold after defeating Timothy's militia? Nightingale thought for a moment. It wasn't your fault. That's right, he nodded. If she was a witch raised by the church since she was a child, she would only regard you as traitors and degenerates. Without several years of getting along with her, it would be difficult to turn her rigid thinking back to the right track. At least, you saved the lives of Vendi and the others. Nightingale laughed. Are you comforting me? Ah. Roland coughed twice. I really think so. Rest assured, I won't feel sad for the enemy. Although she is a witch, the path she chose is completely different from the future I want to see. I understood this on the ship when we came back. Nightingale took out a piece of dried fish and stuffed it into her mouth. I defeated the enemy and protected my sisters. I was just doing my duty. It's good that you can think like this, Roland said with relief. It seemed that he had underestimated her. He had thought that she would feel lost and confused about killing a witch with her own hands. He didn't expect that she would be able to adjust in such a short time. It seemed that whether it was her mind or faith, Nightingale was approaching maturity. But there is one thing I want to ask you, she said after swallowing the fish and hesitating for a moment. What? These days, did you and Anna do anything? Although Nightingale's voice was getting lower and lower, her eyes were still staring at the prince. You know what I'm talking about. Roland almost knocked over the cup in his hand. Ahem, why do you ask this? I've been busy these days with the refugees. I didn't even have the chance to be alone with her. Her eyes suddenly lit up. You didn't lie. Of course not, Before Roland could finish the second half of his sentence, Nightingale suddenly disappeared in front of him. Then he felt soft lips on his own. The touch was fleeting, leaving only the salty taste of dried fish. After a long time, he realized what she had done. Wait, but before he could say anything, 2 slender fingers sealed his mouth. Although he couldn't see her, he knew that Nightingale was right beside him. "I know what you want to say." Her whisper came into his ear. "I don't want to change anything, nor do I intend to be in front of Anna. I just want to stay by your side, that's all. Please forgive me for not daring to show myself, because right now I don't know what kind of expression I should use to face you." "Your Highness, you don't hate me, do you?" Roland opened his mouth. It was impossible for him to say that he hated Nightingale. The obstacles in his heart came from the past 20 years of cognition, and not from a simple preference. On this point, he couldn't deceive himself. Chapter 240. After dinner, Anna walked into the kitchen with a big bag of bird beak mushrooms. These white mushrooms were collected by Maggie from the misty forest. Different from ordinary mushrooms, bird beak mushrooms usually grew on the top of huge trees and lived by absorbing the nutrients of the trees. They were also the favorite food of some birds. Although their taste was extremely delicious, and the thick umbrella handle was as delicate as tender meat, because they grew in high places, it was difficult to detect them from below. There were not many people who were willing to climb up the trees to pick them. On her birthday, her mother would more or less pick some and make 2 mushroom dishes to celebrate her birthday. Compared to the moldy coarse bread and tasteless oatmeal, the unique taste was unforgettable. Although she no longer had to worry about not having enough to eat, and the food she ate every day was much more abundant, she still wanted to personally make these 2 delicious dishes that could only be tasted in Border Town and share them with His Highness Roland, who was busy every day until late at night. The stove in the kitchen had already been extinguished, but this was not a problem for Anna. She threw the firewood into the stove and summoned the black fire. Soon, the flames in the stove burned vigorously. At this moment, Nightingale suddenly jumped out from the wall. "Hey, what are you doing?" "I want to make some food for His Highness. He has been sleeping very late recently." "What about you?" "Ahaha." She touched the back of her head. "I just wanted to find some snacks to eat. I'm a little hungry." After a pause, she curiously stuck her head out. "What are you going to make?" "Well, honey roasted mushrooms and mushroom soup." Anna opened the bag and revealed the bird beak mushrooms. "They are all unique to Border Town. Do you want to try them?" Nightingale nodded and quickly said, "Can you teach me how to make them? I also want to learn how to make them." "Sure," Anna laughed. "It's quite easy." After cutting the mushrooms, she grabbed a large handful and gave it to Nightingale. "First, spread a layer of butter evenly on both sides of the mushrooms, then carefully roast them over the fire until they are golden brown. Be careful not to roast it for too long, or it will be burnt black." Nightingale took the bird beak mushrooms and imitated Anna by smearing oil on both sides of the mushrooms. "Has your Highness been working late recently?" "Yes, in order to settle the refugees and draw some blueprints for new machinery, he almost sleeps after midnight every day. There were a few times when I passed by the office, and I could see light shining through the crack of the door." Anna nodded. "You've been gone for almost half a month. You miss His Highness, don't you?" Nightingale's hand trembled slightly, and the mushroom fell into the butter. It's actually not that bad, it's not just you." Lightning, Lily, Echo, and Vendi all miss His Highness very much. They said that there isn't even a place for them to bathe. They've wanted to come back for a long time. Anna suddenly felt that the other party's expression was a little strange. "Hey, what's wrong?" "No." She shook her head, picked up the mushroom, and smiled a little embarrassedly. "So it's like that." "Indeed. I miss him." "Right." Anna directly pinched the oiled mushroom with her hand and put it into the fire. "If I leave His Highness for half a month, no, maybe only for a few days, I can't wait to see him again." Meeting with Roland Wimbledon in the dungeon was the most incredible moment of her life. Even today, when she thought about it, her heart was filled with warmth and gratitude. If it wasn't for His Highness, even if she could continue to live, she would only live in ignorance and confusion, just like those numb townspeople. It was His Highness who taught her the beauty of this world. Whether it was the sauce-covered pepper steak or the theoretical basis of natural science, his appearance filled a new aspect of her life. It finally made her feel that she was no longer the same as others, but a unique witch. The other sisters must have felt the same. They believed that as long as they got along with His Highness for a long time, it was impossible not to fall into his unique charm. Regarding this, Anna firmly believed. Ah, did I roast this for too long? Nightingale lifted the iron fork. The side of the mushroom had already turned brown. A little. She couldn't help but laugh. The bird beak mushroom is very delicate, so the roasting time must not be too much, not too little. You'll be able to master it after a few more tries. I'll prepare the ingredients for the stew first. Nightingale dipped the slightly burnt mushroom in honey and salt, then threw it into her mouth. Well, it's quite delicious. Looking at the girl who skillfully mixed the various leaves and ingredients together, she asked curiously, "Did you often do this before?" "Yes, pickling food, grinding wheat flour, doing part-time work for the nobles, helping the neighbors' sheep bathe and shave," Anna said. "Besides going to teacher Carr's school, I spent most of my time doing these things." She paused. "But after my mother passed away, my father never allowed me to go to the school again. He didn't even allow me to leave the house." "I'm sorry, it's okay, it's all in the past." Anna's eyes were bright, like a blue lake under the moonlight. "Compared to most of the witches, I'm already considered a very lucky one, isn't it?" The mushroom slices that had been smeared with oil curled up slightly under the flame, emitting a slight crackling sound. After sprinkling some salt and roasting it twice, they could already smell the fresh fragrance. The milky smell of the heated butter mixed with the unique smell of the bird beak mushroom, making one's mouth water. Finally, they spun the mushroom in the honey jar, completing the roasted mushroom. Whether it was the bird beak mushroom itself or the honey, both could be collected from the misty forest. For the locals, if they happened to saw down a tree with both a beehive and a bird beak mushroom on top, it could be considered an extremely lucky day. When the stew pot emitted white steam, the two of them had also finished roasting and seasoning their respective mushrooms. "It's done, at least it looks good." Nightingale stuffed another piece into her mouth. "It turns out that I'm also quite talented in cooking. Pfft, this piece seems a little salty. The time is just right." Anna looked out the window at the night sky. "Let's deliver it to His Highness. Please help me deliver it to him." She clasped her hands together. "Please. Aren't you coming with me?" "No," she smiled. "Because I don't know what kind of expression to show when I see him." Chapter 241. Roland was designing the pattern of the medal for tomorrow's award ceremony. Logically speaking, this wasn't particularly important work, and he should have finished it a long time ago. However, he had been feeling uneasy since the afternoon. To be precise, it had been since Nightingale kissed him. Although he had a vague premonition before, she didn't say it out loud, so he couldn't take the initiative to say it. Now that it was confirmed, how should he respond to her feelings? Nightingale's question also made him understand that he didn't hate Nightingale. In fact, he even felt a little smug. Who would hate a beautiful, calm, and beautiful woman who he had been with day and night? Roland couldn't respond to her directly because of his 20 years of experience, the practical problems he would face in the future, and Anna's thoughts. Especially the last point, he couldn't ignore Anna and only act according to his own preferences. Perhaps he could only leave the answers to these questions to time. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. "Come in, it's not locked," Roland shouted. At the same time, he was a little surprised. Who would come to his office at this time? It was Anna who pushed the door open. She was holding 2 plates in one hand and a crock in the other. Before she could speak, Roland already smelled the tempting aroma. "Food?" "Yes." Anna smiled and put the plates on the table. She then took the bowl that covered the crock and poured out the milky soup. "This is called honey roasted mushrooms. I made 1 plate, and Nightingale made the other." The one in the crock is mushroom soup, seasoned with common herbs. It looks delicious. Roland licked his lips. Sit down and eat with us. Anna nodded and sat across the table. Where's Nightingale? Why isn't she here? She said that she didn't know how to look when she saw you, she answered. I don't quite understand why she should care. So that's how it is. Roland sighed softly in his heart. Although he said it confidently and without any regret, he even boasted shamelessly that it wasn't his fault. He only did what he wanted to do, but in reality, he was no better than a squirrel who plucked up his courage to peek out of the hole. Really, was he bold or cowardly? Since that's the case, let's eat first. He picked up a piece of mushroom and put it in his mouth. The sweetness of the honey instantly melted in his mouth, followed by the juice contained in the mushroom. In an era without MSG, this rich and delicious taste was enough to make people speechless. The salt further enhanced its freshness, and finally, the mushroom's own chewy texture, delicate and tough, the taste was simply impeccable. These are not ordinary mushrooms. After Roland swallowed it, he immediately discovered that it was different from the others. Generally, it was good enough that mushrooms could keep their texture smooth and refreshing after being barbecued. How could they have their own juice? It's not like they were made from soup. Yes, it's a specialty of the concealing forest. The people in the town call it the bird beak mushroom. Anna smiled and explained the mushroom's origin. Because of this, I want you to try it. Roland tasted another mushroom used to make soup. It was equally delicious, and the juice it contained was much richer. It felt like he was eating a soup dumpling, and when he chewed, it had a crispy texture. This long-lost taste made him think of an extremely common, all-purpose seasoning MSG that was suitable for any dish in the future. Before the discovery of sodium glutamate, chefs could only use indirect methods to enhance the freshness of dishes, such as using whole chicken, bones, mushrooms, and soybeans to make soup stock. Although the chefs of the future preferred to use the original flavor to show off their exquisite cooking skills, it must be said that even a lousy novice could increase the taste of the food by more than one level after adding MSG. If the bird beak mushroom was naturally plump and juicy, it was simply the ideal material for MSG extraction. Growing on trees, it was difficult to pick, so it was not popularized. This was not a problem for Roland. Are there a lot of these mushrooms? I don't know, but it should be a lot. Anna took a small bite. Maggie said that she only flew around the edge of the forest once and helped me pick a big bag. That's really good news. Roland neatly finished the mushroom slices that Anna roasted, and reached for another plate with his chopsticks. I was worried that the steak would either be sprinkled with pepper or honey. I'm almost sick of eating it. Pfft. What's wrong? No, nothing. His heart was full of tears. Oh my God. This piece is really salty. Did Nightingale accidentally drop it into the salt jar? Although he thought so, he still swallowed the mushroom. After that, Roland found that the rest of the mushroom slices were either burnt or not fully cooked, and one side was burnt yellow and the other half was half raw. Fortunately, the bird beak mushroom itself was very delicious. To a large extent, it covered up her poor cooking skills. I'm full. He put down his chopsticks, after finishing the second plate with great difficulty, and drinking the soup. His stomach was already bloated. Thank you. Well, there's also Nightingale. Anna's smile was so cute that Roland could not help but reach out and pinch her nose. The latter let out a whimper, leaned forward and kissed the prince's cheek. Then I'll go wash the dishes. Remember to sleep early. After the witch left, Roland let out a light breath. Although he did not want to ignore Anna's thoughts, some things were not so easy to say. He helplessly thought that this was probably related to his identity as a mechanical dog. After all, during his entire academic period, he rarely interacted with the opposite sex. Even after graduating, he successfully entered a large-scale design institute, and had a considerable salary. This still did not change. Fortunately, there was still a long way to go before he could completely defeat the church, so he could slowly think about what to do next. As for now, it was better to concentrate on the work in front of him. The next morning, When Roland stepped onto the temporary wooden platform in the square, he was surrounded by a sea of people. The current border town, compared to its previous desolate and poor appearance, had undergone earth-shaking changes. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was completely new. The sparse old houses in the town had all been demolished, replaced by construction sites and brick houses. Moreover, the latter were all built according to the overall planning of the residential area, looking neat and tidy at first glance. Although it only occupied 1/3 of the town's land, it was enough to accommodate the original 2,000 residents. When the 3-story and 4-story residential buildings were put into construction, as well as the subsequent residential areas, the same piece of land, the population would only increase. At present, the name border town was obviously not in line with the real situation. There was no town that could have a population of nearly 20,000 and a professional army of 600 people. He intended to wait until the next spring to officially promote this place into a real city. Under the effect of Echo's ability, Roland's voice quickly made the crowd quiet down. Today, it is Border Town's first awards ceremony, used to commend and encourage those who have made great contributions to this place. From the time I arrived here, almost half a year has passed. We have defeated the demonic beasts, defeated the Duke, and built the town into what it is today. Many people have paid a lot for this, and among them, there are a few outstanding people. They are not nobles, nor are they rich merchants. Before working for me they were just ordinary people, just like you. He looked around and said loudly, but now, they will get a generous reward. Including a medal made by me, 100 golden dragon, and 5 acres of land. This news set off a wave in the crowd. Not to mention the medal and land, just the 100 golden dragon, was a huge amount of money that made people envious. This kind of ceremony will not only be held once. In the future, every year there will be an awards ceremony, regardless of birth, regardless of wealth. As long as you have outstanding achievements, you can get this highest honor. Chapter 242. Obviously, there were only 2,000 people gathered in the square, but the momentum was no less than that of the large-scale gatherings of tens of thousands of people in the future. Roland secretly sighed. Echo's ability was really useful. The main purpose of choosing these people was to set an example for the people. Among the 3 of them, none of them were nobles. Iron Axe was from the Sand Nation of the southern region. Although Kyle was the chief alchemist, he didn't come from a prominent family, and had also climbed up step by step from an apprentice, and Nana was a witch. There were foreigners, civilians, and witches. In the words of the future, it was simply impeccable political correctness. Roland hoped that through such a ceremony, he could instill his ideas in all the people. Border Town only cared about merit, not origin. The first person to come forward to receive the award was Iron Axe, and Roland personally handed him a gold medal with the Greycastle Tower emblem, a gear, and a ring of wheat. The soldiers of the First Army under the stage raised their hands and applauded, and many people whistled. You should all know his name, Iron Axe, the commander of the First Army. Roland turned to face everyone. Before the arrival of the months of the demons, he was just an ordinary hunter in the town. Iron Axe has never missed a battle in Border Town, and just a month ago, he led the soldiers of the First Army to King's City to rescue the refugees besieged by the demonic plague in the eastern region. Now, more than 6,000 people are temporarily living outside the city walls, and it was him who brought them back. Most of the people in the square were natives and soldiers of the First Army. There were only a few hundred serfs and refugees, but under Echo's leadership, the atmosphere was not cold at all. After Roland's words, the crowd immediately echoed with the approval and cheers of the refugees, and the intensity of the applause was no less than that of the First Army. Iron Axe also seemed very excited, probably because he had never thought that, with his identity as a member of the Majin clan, he could also win the prince's favor. He first performed the military salute formulated by Roland, and then knelt on one knee, giving the kingdom's knight's salute. If not for Roland supporting him, he was afraid that he would have performed the Sand Nation's salute. Get up. As a soldier, you only need to salute, Roland said with a smile. Thank you. Your Highness. His voice trembled slightly, as if he was trying to suppress his emotions. The prince comfortingly patted Iron Axe's shoulder and handed him 100 golden dragon coins. Then he asked Kyle Sichi to come to the front of the stage. This might be the first time you've seen him. He's the chief alchemist of the Redwater City Alchemy Workshop in the center of the kingdom, Mr. Kyle Sichi. As soon as these words came out, the subjects all sucked in a breath of cold air. Chief alchemist? Isn't that a sage who is respected and courteous even in front of the king? Just like the royal astrologers? No, the status of alchemists is even higher than that of astrologers. After all, no one can say for sure whether the latter's prophecy will come true or not, but at least the things that alchemists make are real. And he's from the Alchemy Workshop of Redwater City. I heard that only the Alchemy Workshop of King's City can compare to him. In the Four Kingdoms, alchemists and astrologers had a transcendent status. For the common people, the alchemists, who were known as sages, were more worthy of preaching than the great nobles and lords. Roland was very satisfied with everyone's reaction. He stretched out his hand and gestured for them to calm them down. Then he said, although Mr. Sichi didn't personally participate in the previous battles, the several improvements of the flintlock, from single shot to continuous shot, are inseparable from his chemistry laboratory. This is also an important guarantee for the First Army to win. Without these alchemy, chemical products, Border Town wouldn't be able to truly win peace and tranquility. The prince paused for a moment. By the way, the chemistry laboratory is currently recruiting apprentice alchemists. After receiving the town's universal primary education and passing the examination, all subjects can be recruited. Those who pass will not only get a generous reward, but also have the opportunity to become an outstanding master alchemist like Mr. Sichi. The crowd once again burst into an uproar. Kyle himself had an impatient look on his face. He took the medal and angrily said, "You called me here just for this? It's really a waste of time. I might as well do a few more experiments. This is a great opportunity for publicity. Don't you often complain about the lack of manpower?" Roland shrugged his shoulders. "Wait until the scale of the laboratory is doubled. I intend to write the intermediate chemistry and give it to you to teach." Intermediate chemistry? Kyle immediately bowed. "Thank you, Your Highness." Although concentration was very important, training successors was equally urgent. The greater the foundation of the masses, the easier it would be for the project to produce results. It was the same for scientific research. Roland didn't intend to put all his eggs in one basket. Of course, he wouldn't let go of such a perfect advertising opportunity. The last person was Nana. Looking at the nervous little girl who had come to his side, Roland couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Compared to hiding during the months of demons, now he finally intended to push the witches in front of the public. After nearly half a year of preparation, Border Town had now ushered in the best situation. Choosing Nana as the representative was also a choice he had made after careful consideration. In the First Army, she was called an angel by the soldiers, and her reputation was even higher than Iron Axe's, second only to himself. Many of Border Town's residents had also received her treatment. Whether it was the mine accident or the mechanical injury, everyone had developed the habit of looking for the little angel for treatment. The serfs, after repeatedly watching the performance of the play, The Witch Story, were no longer as resistant to witches as before. In the play, the image of a brave woman with a tortuous fate won many people's favor and sympathy. The fugitives also survived because of Lily's ability. Even if some of them hated witches, they wouldn't speak ill of them after being rescued. Not to mention that they weren't weak individuals who were chased by the church. At least in Border Town, these women with extraordinary abilities were protected by the Lord. And the most crucial point was, even if there were believers of the church who wanted to expose them, it would be very difficult to set off any storm in the western region. Border Town was now completely under their rule. The church in Longsong's stronghold had been razed to the ground by Timothy, and the church had lost its stronghold to monitor the western region. Unless they went to the faraway Fallen Dragon Ridge or Redwater City, they wouldn't be able to find even a single priest who had been reported. Before Roland could even open his mouth to introduce her, the square burst into thunderous cheers. "Miss Nana! Miss Nana has come. Miss Angel, thank you for curing my husband. Little girl, if you have time, you must come to my house to eat. I specially raised 2 chickens, whether it's steamed egg custard or stewed chicken soup, it's all good. Nana, she's looking at me. No, she's looking at me. Nana couldn't help but cover her mouth, her eyes becoming moist. Roland believed that at this moment, the other witches had the same feelings as her, they had finally gotten rid of the evil identity that the church had imposed on them. From now on, they could be like ordinary people, walking under the sun. Roland smiled and patted her head, don't be afraid, simply respond to everyone's enthusiasm. Don't forget, you are now the representative of the Witch Union. Chapter 243. The first awards ceremony lasted until noon. Roland, who was also the laureate, commentator, and host, was exhausted. Fortunately, the ceremony finally ended with the ringing of the noon bell and the sound of the cannon salute. He returned to the castle, sweating profusely. Just as he stepped on the 3rd floor, he saw Anna leaning against the door of the office with a smile. What's wrong? You'll know when you go in. She blinked her beautiful lake blue eyes. It can't be some kind of prank show, right? Roland opened the door with a confused look, and then immediately froze in place. He saw 12 witches standing neatly in 2 rows, with Scroll and Vendy at the front. Seeing the prince appear, all of them simultaneously lifted their skirts, bent their knees, and bowed to him. Ahem, Scroll was the first to speak. Your Royal Highness, your actions have proven everything you said, and the sisters are deeply grateful for it. No words can describe our gratitude, and in the future, please let us continue to serve you. So that's how it is, Roland breathed a sigh of relief, I thought you were going to say goodbye together. Pfft, Vendy couldn't help but laugh out loud, how could it be, Your Royal Highness, this is the holy mountain that witches dream of. As long as you don't drive us away, we hope to live here forever. And this is also what I want to see. In fact, you don't have to do this, I'm not only helping you, but also helping myself. You don't have to be too serious, I prefer your relaxed appearance. I said we don't have to be so formal, Lily snorted, see, he thinks we're too serious. Didn't he say that? Didn't you just agree to it? Mystery Moon muttered in a low voice, traitor. Well, let's go to the dining room first, Your Royal Highness still needs to change clothes. Scroll helplessly held her forehead, by the way, I heard from Miss Anna that you've been sleeping very late recently. Please take care of your body, before that goal is achieved, you can't fall down. Don't worry, Roland smiled, my body is very good. After the witches filed out, only he and Anna were left in the office. What? Are you going to thank me too? Roland teased her. I want to say the same thing as them. Anna smiled. No words can describe my gratitude. And then, you want to live in Border Town? Not necessarily. Roland was startled. His heart skipped a beat. Why? Because you won't stay here forever, Anna tilted her head and said. And no matter where you go, I'll always follow you. A warm feeling suddenly welled up in his heart. From the day he met her, her thoughts had never changed. Whether it was the invitation from the Witch Cooperation Association, or the critical moment of fighting against the demonic beasts, she always chose to stand with him. At this moment, Anna suddenly took 2 steps forward and hugged him gently. Wait, there's sweat, Roland reminded. The girl didn't answer. Instead, she put her head on his chest, as if she wanted to remember the smell, and took a deep breath. He finally gave up the idea of pushing her away. His hands wrapped around her white neck and didn't let go for a long time. After lunch, Roland took a cold shower and quickly threw himself into work. He called Car Van Bate, spread out a detailed map of Border Town, and pointed to the Redwater River. I want to build a bridge here. Not a pontoon. Carr thought for a moment and said, Please forgive me, Your Highness, but the Redwater River is nearly 100 meters wide. It is almost impossible to build a stone bridge. Even an arch bridge can only cross 1/3 of the distance. Moreover, the Redwater River's water flow is so great that there is no way to put a foot on the pier. Even a stone pillar as thick as a person will be washed away. In addition to rafts and pontoons, there is no bridge on the entire river. It's not a stone bridge, but a steel bridge, Roland explained. There are 3 bridges in total. The middle pier will be solved by the witches. You only need to set up the bridge approach in advance. But I require a slope at the bridgehead, raising the entire bridge so that the river sailboat can pass, and the mast won't touch the bottom of the bridge. Isn't that like building the bridge into the sky? Carr asked in surprise. It's only about 6 or 7 meters above the ground. He drew a sketch of the 3-span iron bridge on the sketch. In order to better develop the south bank in the future, as well as the construction of the dock, there must be a bridge over the river that won't affect the passage of the boats. Although the pontoon bridge is simple, it is equivalent to blocking the river, which is disadvantageous to the subsequent development. The First Army's expedition to King's City gave Roland a lot of inspiration. He found that the rivers within the territory of Grey Castle were accessible in all directions, and the major cities were basically built next to several main rivers. If he were to launch a war in the future, he would have several shallow water heavy gunboats, which would definitely provide firepower support and a sharp weapon to attack the city. After all, the power of a naval gun, which was famous for its caliber, was far greater than that of a field gun. And if he wanted to build a boat, he first needed a dock, so the steel bridge plan came into being. But I don't have any similar bridge construction experience. Carr seemed a little hesitant. I don't either, Roland shrugged his shoulders. Just think of it as your first time slowly exploring it. You can first build a bridge on the shore to test it, and then move it to the Redwater River when there are no problems. He took the opportunity to instill the other side with the construction concept of a prefabricated, one-off hoisting construction. Just like the installation of a water tower, with Hummingbird to reduce its weight, and your student Anna to help with the assembly and welding, it shouldn't be too difficult. As you wish, Your Highness. He nodded. In addition, I have a very important project for you. The prince moved his finger to the castle area. I intend to expand the backyard and enclose all the open space on the highland. At the same time, I will build a 3-story building here. If everything went well, next month Tilly's 5 witches would arrive in Border Town, and there would be no extra rooms in the castle. Although it could be temporarily changed to 3 people in a room, in the future there would always be more and more witches, and it would be impossible to always make do. The superior living environment and all kinds of novel and comfortable experiences were also one of his strategies to keep the witches. Whether it was the ancient people's difficulty in changing from extravagance to frugality, or the modern people's sugar-coated bullets, a beautiful and comfortable life would always make people indulge in it. A 3-story, brick house. It's not completely a brick house, Roland smiled. Its name should be called a brick and concrete structure. The pillars and roof beams are made of reinforced concrete, just like human bones. This kind of structure can make the house even higher, and in the future, it won't be a problem to build a 4-story or 5-story house. Reinforced, concrete. Carr repeated with a confused face. It is a mixture of cement, sand, and stones, with steel bars embedded in the middle to strengthen its bending performance, he said. Of course, the specific amount of each ingredient needs to be strictly tested. If the configuration is successful, it will even be stronger than natural bluestone. In theory, this kind of thing had a very large amount of flexibility in its quality. Both were concrete, but the cement bought in the countryside and the cement mixed in the mixing station were 2 completely different things. The steel bars were the same. Some people, when building their own houses on the homestead, didn't even put pebbles, or used iron wire or bamboo instead of steel bars. When Roland stayed in the countryside, he had witnessed the process of several country villas rising from the ground. And he also intended to imitate them. After all, it was only a 3-story house. No matter how much they skimped on the materials, it would still be difficult to collapse. In addition, he hoped that through the witch's residential building project, Carr would be able to master this kind of perfect building material that could change its shape at will, just like artificial stone. As one of the development directions of the construction industry, concrete occupied almost half of it. He wasn't proficient in construction, and what he knew was only superficial knowledge from the countryside. Therefore, broadening the field of vision of stonemasonry and leading it to the right path was the right approach. Do you want me to slowly explore this?" he asked. Chapter 244. After the moon had risen to the top of his head, the hot air gradually cooled down. Sitting in the garden, Theo could see the distant pubs, brothels, and casinos with a little light coming from the windows. Under the curtain of the night, it was like the stars in the sky, showing the prosperity of the city. Only in the inner city of King's City could one see such a scene. Even after the demonic plague ended, nearly a third of the civilians in the outer city had died. It still wouldn't affect the mood of the nobles in the inner city to drink and have fun. If you listened carefully, you could even hear the faint sound of crying carried by the evening wind. This house with a garden and a pond was bought by him for 150 golden dragon coins. It was located on the hillside near the outer edge of the inner city, so even during the day there weren't many people wandering around. In addition to meeting with informants and exchanging information, he usually didn't live here. Instead he would choose to spend the night in an inn, or go to the underground trumpeter for a few days. "My lord, they are all here." A man holding an oil lamp came out of the room. It was Hill Fox who was lurking in the skeleton's fingers. "Light the candles," Theo nodded and walked into the house. Under the dim candlelight, Hill and 5 other people were sitting around a round wooden table. When they saw the guard appear, they all got up and bowed their heads. Theo looked at them blankly, hoping to find out whether they were reliable or not from their expressions and small movements. Unfortunately, Miss Nightingale had already returned to Border Town with the fleet. If she was here, she would immediately be able to make the most accurate judgment. They were Hill's companions, the members of the Pigeon and Top Hat acrobatic troupe, full of resentment towards the new king. A week ago, during the siege of the pier, it just so happened that one of the people lurking in the Dreamland water had informed Theo about the rats' night attack plan in advance. Now that the demonic plague incident had gradually subsided, he decided to meet this group of people in King's City. If what Hill said was true, then they would be good seedlings for intelligence. "In addition to Mr. Fox, the rest of you should first introduce yourselves," Theo said. "My name is Rocky Mountain, my lord." The most robust man took the lead and spoke in a low, muffled voice. He was nearly 6 feet tall, and the bulging muscles on his arms showed that he was full of strength. Acting as a strongman in the acrobatic group. Currently, he has joined the Blood Sale. "I'm a clown." The short man sitting next to Rocky pointed at his nose. He looked to be the youngest among them, about 18 or 19 years old. "Of course I'm a clown in the group, but I don't mix with the rats. Instead, I perform some tricks in the taverns." Jom and Neil. The next 2 people were a pair of brothers. Be it in appearance or attire, they were no different from the typical commoners in the outer city. They had dedicated all their property to Priest Fairy, and were now devout believers in the church. Theo couldn't help but think, could it be that both of them had a favorable impression of Hill's wife? He suppressed his doubts and looked at the last person. "They all call me the magician, my lord." The other party bowed again. "I originally pretended to be a frustrated person and threw myself into the Dreamland water. Unfortunately, most of them died or escaped. Even Fierce Tooth Tanis was killed by the Judgment Army of the Church. Everyone is busy looking for a new target." "Died at the hands of the Judgment Army?" Theo raised his eyebrows. "Aren't they secretly supported by the Church?" "I also heard it from others." He spread out his hands. After the siege of the dock, Tanis was ambushed by the Skeleton Fingers when he returned to the Eastern District. In the end, he only had a few dozen people left. That night, he angrily took his men who had stayed in the nest to find the church, but the next day, only 2 or 3 of them came back. According to them, he quarreled with Priest Fairy, and then was stabbed in the chest by the God's Punishment Army. In short, the Dreamland water is finished. So that's how it is, Theo thought. It's probably because of the loss of the strength that they had accumulated with great difficulty. The leader of Fierce Tooth was in a precarious position. He wanted to seek help from the church, but was refused, which led to the dispute. However, these were all unimportant details. He only needed to know that the Dreamland water was now only in name. There was no doubt that this was good news. He might be able to take advantage of this opportunity to win over a group of rats who had nowhere to go, and expand his own sources of information. Presumably, you have already learned my name from Hill. Theo knocked on the table and said in a deep voice, I am His Highness Roland Wimbledon's personal guard, responsible for collecting information from all over the kingdom. Since you are willing to come here, in a sense, you have already expressed your intentions. However, for the sake of seriousness, I still want to ask you one more time, are you willing to serve His Highness? We are willing. The 5 of them said one after another. As long as I can get justice from Timothy Wimbledon, I am willing to do anything, Hill added one word at a time. Very well, from now on, at the same time every week, we will meet here. If there is any urgent information, you can also report it to me in advance, as long as you place a pot of purple flowers at the entrance of the residence. Theo continued, after I take note of it, I will wait for you in my room that night. When you knock on the door, remember to use 3 long and 2 short signals, do you understand? Seeing them agree in unison, Theo nodded with satisfaction. A qualified intelligence agent will not easily expose himself. The first thing you have to do is to hide your identity. Whether it is to inquire about information on your own, or to send people to collect suspicious information, you must always keep this in mind. If you need money, you can apply to me. Remember, don't act rashly. Timothy will not sit on the throne forever, and His Highness Roland has personally promised this. He paused for a moment and then asked, so, do you have anything else to say? My lord, Timothy has returned from the eastern region today, Hill said. You should have also received the news. In the afternoon, the new King's Knight team had entered the city through the eastern gate with the flag raised high. Many residents had witnessed this scene. Theo didn't answer, he knew that the other side must have something else to say. But in the evening, I heard from Black Hammer that Timothy seems to be planning to recruit a group of rats to join the army, in exchange for the opportunity to become free people. Several leaders of the Skeleton Fingers have already gone to the palace. It doesn't sound like a fabrication. Recruit rats? Theo remained calm on the surface, but his heart fiercely sank. Obviously, these rats could not fight as official soldiers, so it was very likely that they had used pills to strengthen them and used them as a surprise attack tactic, just like the attack on Longsong's stronghold last time. But this time, where was the other side's target? This is interesting news, he said in a low voice. Remember to keep an eye on the rats, and if there is any news, immediately report to me. Chapter 245. Outside the city wall of the western region, under the guidance of the soldiers of the First Army, the refugees underwent an unprecedented identity check. Barav naturally knew that the population was His Royal Highness Roland's most valued wealth. In order to bring these people back to Border Town, His Royal Highness had spent a lot of Golden Dragon, and even didn't hesitate to send the First Army on an expedition to King City. When the bill from Marjorie's Chamber of Commerce was placed in front of Barav, his jaw almost dropped. In the past half a month, the caravan had spent more than 2,000 golden dragons on renting ships, transporting goods, and food supplies, which was equivalent to the price of 4 steam engines. If it weren't for the deposit for the 2 sailboats last month, the financial statement this time would probably be in the red. After the refugees were brought back, the tedious and huge statistical work fell on his shoulders. Almost all the officials and apprentices of the city hall were mobilized. They set up wooden sheds and passageways at the foot of the city wall to classify and record these people. Looking at the dozen or so lines of refugees slowly passing through the checkpoint, Barav felt like he was looking at a group of moving coins. Compared to the long queue of ordinary civilians, the professional talent channel that he was personally in charge of was much more deserted. So far, only 50 to 60 people had passed through. "I'm a carpenter." At this time, a middle-aged man walked over cautiously. "I heard that any craftsman can get a residence." "Yes," said Sirius Daly. "What is your name? Can you read?" The former knight of the Wolf family was doing a good job in the Ministry of Agriculture, at least until now he had not made any mistakes. Barav was very satisfied with his judgment of people. Although this was a census, there were only so many literate people in the city hall, so they had no choice but to pull people from other departments over. "Ah. My lord, my name is Mazer." The other party paused. "I don't know how to read." "Can't read or write?" "Yes." The middle-aged man lowered his head. "Well, if it's a carpenter." Sirius rummaged through a stack of inquiry forms, looking for a form marked with the word carpenter. "Ah, found it. Let me ask you a few questions." This preliminary examination method was thought up by His Royal Highness. He gathered the craftsmen of various industries together and asked them some professional knowledge and corresponding solutions. Then, he recorded their answers and formed a set of inquiry forms. In this way, as long as they asked a few questions during the audit, they could immediately know if the other party was lying or not. The first time Barav saw this kind of lie detection method, he couldn't help but want to applaud the devil's careful thinking. If one didn't work in this industry, most civilians wouldn't understand these things. If a person wanted to impersonate someone, 2 or 3 questions would be enough to make them choke and speechless. "What is the tool used to flatten the surface of wood?" "It's a flatbed plane, my lord." "What are the commonly used saws?" "Frame saws and pull saws." Occasionally, hand saws are used when cutting small parts. After a few questions, Mazer was able to answer most of them. Furthermore, his tone of speaking gradually became smoother. "Well, it seems that you are indeed a carpenter." Sirius was about to write down the man's name on the identity register when Barav stopped him. "My lord. Don't be so quick to judge, first look at his hands." He looked at Mazer. "Stretch out your hands." Hearing these words, Mazer was startled, and with a puzzled face, he spread out his hands. The skin on his palms was extremely rough, and there were many soil grains mixed in the cracks. Below each finger was a thick callus, looking weather-beaten. If he is a carpenter, his palms shouldn't be so rough, especially the 2 meat pads at the bottom of his palms, which often rub against the wood, will become smooth and hard. In addition, carpenters often need to use black paint to draw outlines, so the palms will be stained with a large amount of black ink that is difficult to wash off and become black, not yellow. Barav calmly said, "Also, when he answers, he will always first look away." Many people will inadvertently show a similar expression when recalling memories from the past that they don't often use. If he is a carpenter, his answers should be very natural. Is that so?" Sirius's eyes widened. Barav looked at the surprised Mazer and said in a deep voice, "You should have heard the warning from the First Army when they summoned you. Any act of impersonation, deception, and refusal to register will be severely punished. Either you will be assigned to the mines, or you will be expelled from the western region. Now, do you still think that you are a carpenter?" "No, my lord, I was wrong." Mazer couldn't help but kneel on the ground. "The carpenter is my neighbor, I just often watch him work." "Go over there and line up." Seeing the other side flee, Sirius was speechless. "My lord, how do you know these things?" "During the months of demons, I once did a census for His Highness, and I have dealt with every carpenter in the town, so I conveniently wrote them down," Barav replied, pretending to be careless. Seeing the knight's shocked and admiring expression, his heart suddenly floated with a sense of pride. Although the devil's methods were ingenious, they would still be deceived by some people. Only a person like me can make up for His Highness's shortcomings. Moreover, under His Highness's influence, the way I deal with problems has recently changed. Barav couldn't help but secretly sigh. A civilian like this, in the past, would definitely be punished using Thunder's methods, in order to deter those who were ready to cause trouble. But now, he directly let him go, probably to save His Highness the Golden Dragon. After all, every fugitive was worth a lot. If they didn't work for Border Town for more than 10 years, they simply couldn't make up for the cost of transporting them from thousands of miles away. When the next fugitive passed the professional questioning, Sirius didn't immediately register, but looked at Barav. He looked at the interrogator a few times, nodded and said, "You record it, I will take him to His Highness." After passing through the hole in the city wall, on the other side was the shed set up by Roland Wimbledon, which was also the last inspection checkpoint. Here, they would be personally questioned by His Highness, and if they were confirmed to have no problems, they would receive a resident identity card and become an official resident of Border Town. At present, there was a shortage of housing in Border Town, so they could only give priority to the craftsmen. As for the fugitives who didn't have any skills, they would have to wait outside the city wall for another 2 or 3 months. Barav also had an ID card. It was a piece of colored cardboard, almost the size of a palm, with his head drawn in the upper left corner. It looked just like a real person, and in the middle was his name, address, and number. On the back of the paper was printed the emblem of Greycastle's 2 guns, as well as His Highness's signature and seal. Whether it was the paper itself or the film wrapped around it, the material was very strange. Whether it was soaked in water or baked on a fire, it couldn't damage the ID card in the slightest. There was no doubt that this thing was definitely made by the witch named Soroya. His Highness Roland seemed to want to promote the ID card to the whole town, so that in the future, no matter if it was to buy food or pay, they would all have to have a certificate. Since the award ceremony, when the Pine family's miss had been awarded a medal, His Highness obviously didn't intend to hide the existence of witches anymore, and Barav didn't want to care about who was right and who was wrong. Even, he began to hope that His Highness Roland would be able to defeat the church and completely unify Greycastle. There was no doubt that the higher His Highness's position was, the more generous the rewards he could get. Of course, there was still a long way to go to reach this step, so he could think about it later. Now that the population of Border Town had already surpassed that of Longsong Stronghold, His Highness also revealed to him the city construction plan for next year. Once it was connected to Longsong Stronghold, more than half of the Western Territory would become a whole. The scale would undoubtedly surpass King's City and become the most magnificent city in Greycastle, and as the City Hall manager, what kind of promotion would he get at that time? Chapter 246. Genius 1 second. Remember love yo yo go. Say net, to provide you with wonderful novels to read. Roland was sitting in his office chair, carefully looking at the statistical report made by Barav. It took a full 3 days for the city hall to sort out more than 6,000 refugees. Among them, the proportion of craftsmen was low, and in the end only 186 people had passed the review. Of course, this was also related to the intensity of the review, because it involved the allocation of housing and the issuance of identity cards. In Roland's consideration, in the future, only residents with identity cards could be considered as his official subjects, so he had to firmly guard them. In the early days, when the population was small and relatively easy to control, he would cultivate the town's core supporters. After the population grew, he would then use the power of the people to assimilate the other newcomers. After all, people were social animals. As long as the environment was like this, there would be more and more people who would agree with his ideas, and he would really be able to bring a better life to the people. Then I'll leave the accommodation of these craftsmen to you. Whether they are single or have a family, they will at least be allocated a separate suite, Roland said. Yes, Barav replied, Your Highness, may I ask, will these houses be given as a gift? According to the rental rate, he shook his head. The reason why the natives are given a new house for free is because most of them already have an old house. It can be considered as exchanging their old house for a new house. But if these people are given a house as a gift, it will not be conducive for them to go out of their homes and actively devote themselves to work. Of course, the rent can be calculated according to a lower grade, and tell them that as long as they work hard and save enough golden dragon, they can directly buy a house. I understand. After a moment of silence, Roland suddenly asked, after the award and honor ceremony, how many refugees appeared? So far, there is not a single native, and there are 7 serfs. Barav paused. The eastern region refugees chose to leave. a total of 115 people. Is that so? He softly exhaled. The moment he decided to push the witch to the front of the stage, he already knew that such a situation would occur. In order to assess the reaction of the people and to avoid any accidents, Roland had specially arranged for a team of firearms to be stationed a few miles away from border town. They were to intercept the escapees and at the same time count the number of people to see the degree of acceptance of the witches. Although this answer wasn't perfect, at least it was very good. The Aborigines had completely accepted the witches, which was close to what he had expected. The number of serfs who had fled was much less than what he had expected. It seemed that the effect of the drama of living close to the bottom of the society was the best. But the refugees from the eastern region, who had obviously received the witches' treatment, and whose homes had been destroyed and they were in a desperate situation, still chose to leave. This made Roland feel a little surprised. Your Highness, I suggest that they should all be put to death, Barav said calmly. Those who have decided to leave under such circumstances must be people who have been deeply influenced by the church. In the foreseeable future, they will not stand on the side of the king, and in all likelihood will turn into believers of the church, so there is no need to show them any mercy. Not necessarily. The people who are truly devout to the church should be the more than 300 refugees who are unwilling to leave King's City in the face of the demonic plague. The prince closed his eyes. These people may just be unable to change their ideas and stubbornly believe that the witches are evil, so they want to escape from this place. Even so, they are still your potential enemies, Barav insisted. If he had met this group of people on the battlefield, Roland would not have hesitated to defeat them, but because of their backward thinking and inconsistent beliefs, he would wantonly wield a butcher's knife to kill a group of civilians. This was a huge psychological obstacle for him. After hesitating for a moment, he finally refused this proposal. I will let Nightingale go and interrogate these escapees. If there are any spies or scouts hiding among them, they will be caught and hanged. The others will be expelled from the western region. Barav's eyes flashed, he lowered his head, and it was only after a long time that he replied, As you bid, Your Highness. Is there anything else to report? For the time being, no, Your Highness. He coughed twice. I will go and deal with the distribution of the houses. Don't worry, these annoying things can be taken care of slowly. Roland opened his eyes, stood up and said, First, come with me to take a few photos, and relax your mood. Take photos? Barav was startled. You will soon know, the prince said with a smile. In the castle's front courtyard, he called Carter, Iron Axe and Soroya together. In the corner of the courtyard, he saw a few 4 or 5 meters wide wooden boards. The ground was also covered with a canvas. Border town is currently not big, but after the land in the south is developed, and then connected to Longsong stronghold, the size will be dozens of times larger than it is now. If you walk from east to west, it will take you 1 or 2 days, so you must have something to quickly travel back and forth between places. The cost of raising a horse is very high, and it is impossible to let every person spend a lot of time learning how to ride a horse. Roland said while opening the canvas, I intend to promote this means of transportation in the town. It is easy to use, and the price is much lower than a horse. What is it? Carter was immediately attracted by the novelty in front of him. 2 wheels, an iron frame. Is it a cart? With 2 wheels side by side, even if it is a cart it would be difficult to maintain balance. Barav shook his head. I don't see how it can replace a horse. Only Iron Axe remained silent, quietly waiting for the prince's explanation. Roland smiled. This thing is called a bicycle. I will demonstrate it to you. He put his feet on the pedals, put on a standard starting position, and with 1 foot, he began to ride the bicycle on the stone road in the courtyard. With Anna's precision machining and Soroya's coating technology, it wasn't difficult to make a bicycle by hand. Its principle and structure didn't have any difficulties. The parts that needed to use rubber could be replaced with a coating, such as the inner tire, which was directly drawn on a roll of paper tube. For this purpose, Roland had also specially made a simple pump. The outer tire and the brakes were coated with a harder cowhide, the frame was made of hollow iron, and the brake wire was made of anti-rust copper wire. The only problem was the chain, which could only be cut into shape by Anna and then connected into a long string. As for the classical bicycles that had pedals directly installed on the wheels, he simply didn't like them. After riding a lap, Roland pressed the brakes and easily jumped down. Looking at the row of stunned subordinates, he couldn't help but feel very proud. This was the excellent mount that a traveler should have. Compared to horses that needed to be tamed and fed, a bicycle was much more refreshing. I plan to open a new bicycle factory in the industrial area to produce this kind of transportation tool. Not only do I need to recruit workers, but I also need to do a good job of advertising, striving to promote it to the whole territory as soon as possible. Roland explained simply, "This is the reason why I called you here. You must first learn how to ride a bicycle, and then let Miss Soroya paint your appearance on a wooden board. I want all the people to see that as long as they spend 1 or 2 golden dragon, they can have the same mount as the Lord, the commander of the First Army, the chief knight, and the city hall manager." To be continued. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 247. Genius 1 second. Remember, if you want to go to provide you with wonderful novels to read. What was the symbol of the industrial age? The first thing that came to Roland's mind was the rolling steam train running on the rails. The cast iron cylinders covered in oil stains, the thick crankshaft and huge iron wheels, the rhythmic noises and vibrations, and the steam whistle that cut through the air. For him, his first understanding of the beauty of machinery began from the steam train. Compared to the later mechanical systems that hid the structure under the outer shell, used high-precision processing to reduce vibration, and emphasized sound insulation and absorption measures, it undoubtedly more intuitively showed the power and beauty of industry. He also wanted to cover his territory with rails, so that the train could drag people and goods to and fro all over the Western Territory. But although the ideal was good, the reality was not satisfactory. Not to mention building a steam train, just laying the rails required a lot of steel, which far exceeded the iron ingot production capacity of the North Slope Furnace Group. Therefore, he settled for the next best thing. Using a human-powered bicycle became Roland's best choice. The more flat roads were built in the territory, the greater the profit of the bicycle. Moreover, compared to the complex structure of the steam train, it almost didn't need to be maintained, occasionally oiling the chain was enough. If he planned to mass-produce the bicycle, he naturally couldn't let Anna make it by hand, so he first had to build a factory and train a group of professional workers for the production and vehicle assembly. Considering that the earliest the Kingdom Avenue could be completed was next spring, the initial scale of the factory didn't need to be too big. After Anna manufactured the necessary machine tools for the assembly line, the workers would slowly familiarize themselves with the process, so that they could produce 10 bicycles a month. Among them, the most technical content was the chain, which needed to be stamped by a machine, and then manually inserted into the pins to form the shape. However, rubber parts such as tires and brakes still needed to be made by Soroya's ability. This part of the workload wasn't big, as long as the base mold was prepared, the magic pen could quickly draw a lot of them. The same was true for bearings. Since he couldn't make a reliable rolling bearing, he could take a small piece of steel casing and use it as a sliding bearing. After the inner ring was covered with a smooth mirror coating, the effect was not much worse than the former. When the bicycle was first introduced, only the aristocracy could afford this expensive means of transportation. In order to popularize it among the masses, in addition to wantonly advertising, Roland also intended to implement an installment payment system to reduce the purchase pressure as much as possible. Of course, only those who had obtained an ID card could apply for this form of payment from the city hall. The three of them spent the whole afternoon in the garden. Catranis, worthy of the title of chief knight, was the first to master the riding technique. Iron Axe followed closely behind and was the second to successfully ride a lap around the garden. Berev was the only one who didn't succeed after more than 10 attempts. He was either on the verge of falling or unable to move forward in a straight line. In the end, Roland had to ask Soroya to draw a still scene of him standing next to the bicycle with his hands on the handlebars. "That's it," the witch asked after completing the 4 huge posters. "I'll need to add a few lines of advertising," Roland thought for a moment. "It should be, a new era mount. It will be like this if I have it, and it will be like this if you have it. Below it was written, the bicycle factory is looking for workers. The salary is good, the benefits are good, and there is a chance to get a new bicycle for free. Those who have passed the elementary education level can register at the city hall. After dealing with the bicycle posters, the prince returned to his office. Taking advantage of the fact that there was still some time before dinner, he had one of his guards call for Kyle. Now that he had finally made a breakthrough in the development of mercury fulminate, the development of a new generation of weapons could also be put on the agenda. There was no doubt that in the era of firearms, the caliber represented justice, and the rate of fire represented freedom. The greater the power, the more glory, and the more turrets, the more equality. However, there was an awkward problem. If this continued, the two acids produced in the laboratory would soon not be able to keep up with the consumption. For example, if he wanted to increase the rate of fire, he would have to abandon the black gunpowder, which had a lot of residue, and change it to a smokeless propellant powder, which was collodion, or a mixture of collodion and nitroglycerin. The same was true for high-power explosives. It didn't matter if he couldn't produce trinitrotoluene, TNT, he could use nitrostarch instead. Apart from its poor stability, its power was also a bit higher. No matter which of the above, they all required a large amount of high concentration of fuming nitric acid, and purifying nitric acid required a large amount of concentrated sulfuric acid, which wasn't something that the laboratory's output could meet. In other words, there was no way to use the industrial method to produce the two acids. Even if they developed a more efficient weapon, they would still fall into the predicament of having no bullets to use. When the chief alchemist entered the office, Roland said, "I have a new task for you." "Please say it," Kyle shrugged, "as long as you don't have to attend a ceremony." "I need more acid, and at present, relying solely on the chemical laboratory's output is unable to meet my needs. Therefore, your new task is to design a chemical system that can efficiently and conveniently produce the two acids." "Chemical system?" He looked somewhat confused. "Yes, it is composed of one and several complete reaction devices. As long as the raw materials are put in, it can continuously produce the finished product." Roland briefly explained the nature of industrial production. "I don't know much about this, so you can only rely on yourself to slowly figure it out." Having said that, the prince also knew that this was a very difficult task. It was likely that it would take several years of research, and even then, it might not necessarily produce any results. After all, the other could only rely on some basic reaction principles and chemical equations from the elementary chemistry. "I understand," Kyle nodded, "the things you mentioned really make me feel refreshed. Whether you can complete it or not, the two acids are something I urgently need." Roland paused. "Therefore, next month I plan to expand 3 more laboratories by the Redwater River, and recruit qualified candidates from the subjects to act as experimenters. If you don't have time to teach them, you can choose a few disciples to take care of. After all, the industrial acid method is a very long research project." Probably because of the temptation of the intermediate chemistry, he readily agreed, "Yes, Your Highness." After Kyle left, Roland sighed softly. If the industrial acid method was hopeless, then he could only let Lucia follow him to purify the acid. After all, when the war came, he needed a more powerful weapon to win the victory for Border Town. When Roland opened the drawer, intending to eat some dried fish to relieve his boredom, he found that the snack drawer was empty. Stunned, he raised his head, only to see that a dried fish had been brought to his mouth. "Are you looking for this?" The blonde woman opposite him smiled. Roland bit the dried fish and couldn't help but raise the corner of his mouth. "I thought you would stay like this in the fog for the rest of your life." "That's also good, at least others can't see me, but I can still see you." Nightingale curled her lips. His originally somewhat depressed mood unconsciously dissipated a lot. Seeing the other's familiar appearance, he couldn't help but feel relieved. "You said before that you didn't know what kind of expression to show." "Huh. In fact, it's good to be like this. Your support is my greatest motivation." Chapter 248. "Look, that's Lady Scroll," Piper quietly nudged Jilly with his elbow. I heard she's the Minister of Education. Minister of Education? The latter asked in confusion, what's that? She's the one who manages the teachers. Don't you like teacher Philin the most and hate the loud-mouthed Haben the most? Piper explained, whether it's Philin or Haben, they're all managed by Lady Scroll. Where did you hear this? Jilly blinked her eyes. Is it the big man you mentioned? Humph, of course, he smiled proudly, and I know more than that. Today's graduation ceremony will not only be attended by the officials of City Hall, but also by the Lord himself, His Royal Highness. Really? The little girl's eyes lit up. Will His Royal Highness talk to us? I don't know. Piper touched the back of his head, probably. After all, he had heard it from his elder brother Van, who could be regarded as a great man. Originally, he was just an ordinary gravel worker in the old street, but after joining the militia, he immediately became a squad leader. Now, he was an officer in the artillery team of the First Army, with a monthly salary of up to 25 silver royals, and he had even shaken hands with His Royal Highness and talked to him. Although he lived in the barracks most of the time, when he occasionally came back, he always brought back a lot of novel and interesting stories and information. Every time this happened, Piper would come to his door and pester him with questions. As a former neighbor and admirer of his elder brother Van, Piper could often learn a lot of news from him in advance. For example, Van had personally told him that the Lord would attend the graduation ceremony. As early as a week ago, the First Army had received an order to protect and be on guard, and had also held a drill near the school building. Sure enough, not long after, a team of spirited, well-dressed soldiers walked over with their heads held high. The two people in the middle of the team were His Royal Highness and his chief knight. The crowd could not help but stir up a commotion. After the soldiers surrounded the entrance of the academy building, Roland walked into the hall and waved at the students lined up in rows. Greetings, my subjects. I am the Lord of Border Town, Roland Wimbledon, in charge of the Western region. Congratulations on completing the entire content of universal primary education and becoming the first batch of graduates of Border Town. The crowd was silent. It wasn't that they were indifferent, but most of them were so excited that they didn't know what to say. Jilly grabbed PYP's arm and pinched her. His Highness is talking to us. PYP was also very excited. In this way, he, like Big Brother Van, had been in close contact with His Highness. You were able to pass the test and graduate so quickly because most of you were once Teacher Carr Van Bates students. You were ahead of everyone else from the beginning. So don't be arrogant and complacent. There is still a lot of knowledge in this world waiting for you to explore and discover. Roland continued, of course, this day is still worth celebrating. From today onwards, you have embarked on a path that is completely different from the others. No matter what kind of work he devoted himself to, he would be rewarded handsomely. Here, I would like to congratulate you. Long live His Highness. It was unknown who shouted first, but then everyone excitedly shouted, Long live His Highness. I am willing to serve His Highness. After waiting for the cheers to subside, Roland smiled and said, Next, I will issue you a diploma as proof of honor for the completion of your studies. He opened a booklet. PYP. PYP felt his whole body tremble. He looked at the prince and opened his mouth, but he didn't know what to say. Teacher Philin Schilt waved at him, Don't be afraid, come to His Highness. His hands and feet were stiff as he walked out of the line. He could even hear the sound of his heart pounding. Suddenly, he remembered the military salute that Van, often mentioned. It was much simpler than the noble knight's salute, and could also express his loyalty. It was an etiquette invented by His Highness himself. Although he didn't know the specific posture, he still plucked up his courage, and according to his memory, he put his hand flat in front of his forehead. This action made the prince laugh. He nodded and handed the booklet to PYP. If you move your hand back a little bit, and put it on top of your ear, it will be more standard. Congratulations on your graduation. Thank you. PYP took the booklet, and almost like a log, he he walked back to the line. When His Highness began to issue graduation certificates to the others, he came back to his senses. "Let me see, what is written on it?" Jilly asked curiously. "You also have one, why are you so anxious?" he muttered in a low voice, his hands trembling as he opened the cover of the certificate, only to see a beautiful piece of parchment sewn inside. In the upper left corner was his own head, in the middle was the royal emblem of Greycastle's spear, and there were also a few lines of text. If it was 6 months ago, he could only go to Teacher Carr to tell him the meaning of these characters, but now, PYP could already do the most basic reading and writing. He silently read it in his heart. First graduate of Border Town Academy, PYP. Dean, Scroll. Issued by, Lord of Border Town, Roland Wimbledon. After all the graduation certificates had been issued, Roland clapped his hands, attracting everyone's attention. "From now on, you can take on some jobs that ordinary people find difficult to do. These jobs have good pay, the lowest is calculated from 10 silver royals per month. Now, I would like to ask Lady Scroll to introduce the job content provided by Border Town City Hall." He raised his hand, stopping everyone's discussion. "You don't have to make a choice immediately, you can go back and discuss it with your family first, and then bring your ID card and graduation certificate to the City Hall to apply." Taking advantage of Lady Scroll's introduction, Jilly leaned over and asked, "Do you have an idea?" "I want to work in a bicycle factory, the salary is higher than my father's, and I also have the opportunity to get a new car for free." "It's really great," PYP casually replied. Recently, 4 huge wooden signs had been erected in the town square, on which the portraits of His Highness and several ministers were painted. Several of the ministers were mounted on strangely shaped iron mounts, which had aroused a heated discussion among the townspeople. Moreover, the monthly salary of the bicycle factory was 15 silver royals. If it wasn't for the fact that only those who had completed primary education could apply, I'm afraid it would have already been crowded. But he also had a place he wanted to go. Ever since he had seen the awards ceremony, PYP couldn't help but have such a thought. He also wanted to be like his former classmate Nana. One day he would be able to climb up to the square's platform, in front of thousands of people, and receive the honor personally awarded by His Highness. According to His Royal Highness, only those who had made outstanding contributions to the town would be eligible for the award. If he went to work in the bicycle factory, he was afraid that he would never have such an opportunity in his lifetime. Like Iron Axe, he couldn't lead an army in battle. He also didn't have the incredible ability of a witch. The only thing he could emulate was the chief alchemist Kyle Sichi. Before, he had heard more than once that if he could explore a practical alchemy product, he would be able to bring great wealth and prestige to the territory, and even achieve the title of a sage. He didn't need to be brave, nor did he need to look at his bloodline, he just needed a little bit of luck. There was no other path more suitable for him than this. Thinking of this, PYP made up his mind. Chapter 249. Even in the summer, the ice and snow on the Hermes Plateau did not melt much. Maine stood at the top of the Tower of Heaven and looked into the distance. Outside the city walls, there were only 2 colors of green grass and white snow intertwined with each other, like the scars left by the Battle of the Months of Demons. There was no way to grow any crops in such a climate, so all the food needed by the new holy city had to be transported from the foot of the plateau, which was the old holy city. After staying in Hermes for more than 10 years, he had become accustomed to the ubiquitous cold. "This time, it's only the 2 of us." Taefun pushed open the door and entered. "Is it okay to hold the meeting in the secret room? Do you like to be cooped up in that narrow room?" "No. Of course not." The old bishop stroked his white beard. "If it weren't for Heather always talking about the rules and regulations, I would be happy to exchange information here every time. Even when she talks nonsense, I can at least enjoy the scenery of the holy city. Moreover," he revealed a smile, "I didn't expect that a punctual person like her would be late this time. Maybe she encountered something difficult." Maine sat back at the table. "Maybe she's already on her way." "Maybe." Taefun curled his lips. "You really shouldn't help her find an excuse. Everyone should do what they say, this is what she always says." Even if she encountered trouble, she should report it to us first. She didn't go to the kingdom of eternal winter alone, sending a messenger is just a snap of the fingers. Don't worry about her, Maine pushed the 3 letters in front of Taefun, we have trouble. Trouble? The latter was startled, sat across the round table, and spread out the letters, all bad news? Yes, he took a deep breath, it can't get any worse. Taefun stopped smiling and began to carefully read the first letter. The spread of the demonic plague has been stopped, and the whereabouts of the faceless one are unknown? Wait, what is the demonic plague? It's the latest research results of the pivotal secret area. You don't need to know too much about it, just think of it as a rapidly spreading disease, Maine simply explained. In fact, according to Master Crow-Eye, it was a kind of miniature demonic beast. After special cultivation, it produced a mutation that specifically targeted the human body. The holy elixir that restrained it was also a demonic beast, but its body was even smaller. The source of the disease cannot be directly observed by the eyes, and conventional means cannot cure it. There is only one kind that can stop the spread of the demonic plague. Witches. Taefun quickly thought of the answer. And more than one, he said in a deep voice. After reading the letter, the old bishop slammed his fist on the table. What is this idiot doing? Not only did he send the rats to encircle the mercenaries, he even sent the faceless one. Does he know how important this pure witch is? His idea isn't wrong, Maine frowned, if the letter didn't lie about the number of people, then 1,000 rats would be enough to eat more than 100 mercenaries. However, the enemy seemed to have a powerful long-range crossbow that could be fired continuously. Regarding this point, I remembered that Priest Tyro, who was stationed at Longsong Stronghold, had also mentioned that the reason why the Duke Ryan was defeated by a group of miners was because of their extremely powerful crossbows. Although wearing heavy armor and holding a strong shield can greatly reduce the damage of crossbow bolts, rats do not have such equipment. Even if he wants to use those dregs, he shouldn't easily send Faceless One. Taefun angrily said, I'm afraid that when Heather comes back, she's going to make a lot of thunder. A witch that can grow into a pure witch, without exception, has an extremely rare ability, and it takes a lot of energy to cultivate them. In a sense, they are more precious than the God's Punishment Army. But the ultimate goal of both the witches and the God's Punishment Army is to destroy the enemy and win. Maine said slowly, it's inevitable that there will be losses in the process of using them. Don't tell me you want to save Priest Fairy. Don't forget the law of the church, Maine said in a heavy tone, only the result is something that nobles love to do. Although Fairy failed miserably, his starting point and plan didn't have too many problems, only the enemy was more powerful. Of course, he will be punished, but the specific punishment measures will need to be further considered. But Heather may not think so. Taefun shook his head and opened the second letter. Don't forget, she is responsible for the church's arbitration. I will explain it to her. Not long after, the old bishop turned over the letter in his hand, and said in disbelief, Timothy's militia troops attacked the Longsong Stronghold Church, and then killed the emissary group. Is he crazy? The content of the second letter actually came from 2 sources, one was the report of the acting Perot of Longsong Stronghold, and the other was the local believers' information. Overall, there was indeed a militia from outside the Western Territory that attacked Longsong Stronghold and looted the church. Not only did they take the berserk pill, but their goal was also the medicine stored in the church. So the first point of judgment couldn't be wrong, this team was either from the new King Timothy, or from the Queen of Clearwater Garcia. Comparing the two, it was obvious that the former was more likely. As for the latter point, Maine always felt that there was something strange. If according to the description in Perot's report, after burning the church, the other side immediately withdrew from Longsong Stronghold and disappeared, then how did they intercept and kill the members of the emissary group? At this time, the emissary group should have already arrived in Border Town, so the two sides shouldn't have met. Seeing that Maine didn't say a word, Taefun quickly realized this point. He picked up the first letter and read it again. The wrinkles on his forehead piled up into a ravine. Could it be, after Roland Wimbledon got rid of the emissary group, he pushed all the blame to his brother Timothy Wimbledon? We might as well speculate, the Archbishop said after a moment of silence. Roland intended to obtain this batch of cheap people, so he assigned witches to treat the demonic plague, and then transported all the refugees back to the Western Territory. And before that, in order to avoid being found out by the emissary group that he was raising witches, he sent a knight to raid the emissary group's camp, so that they didn't even have time to send out a carrier pigeon, and then he pushed the responsibility to the stronghold attackers. After all, the agent Perrault was supported by Roland, so it was natural that he helped him fake it. Of course, all of this is speculation, but the disappearance of the emissary group is really too suspicious, and we don't have the energy to send another emissary group. In that case, we should immediately send troops to punish his arrogant behavior, Taifun said in a cold voice. Even if the emissary group has nothing to do with him, these witches who went to the Western Territory are still worth cleaning up. Maine didn't respond, but pointed to the third letter. You'd better read the last letter first. Taifun looked at him with a puzzled expression, then spread out the letter. Soon, his hands began to tremble, and finally he almost couldn't hold the thin paper. A large number of witches appeared in the fjords, and all the churches were destroyed. Then this letter is from the Sea Dragon Bay, which was also the last church to be broken into. Maine closed his eyes and leaned on the chair, his voice suddenly full of exhaustion. It's impossible for a large number of witches to appear in the fjords without warning, so there's only one possibility: they migrated from the mainland. Moreover, the letter also mentioned the extraordinary, and the church's law clearly stipulated that once traces of extraordinary witches' activities were found, the priority must be to send out the gods' punishment army to capture them. But the Fjords Islands were really too far away, and now that the battlefield in the kingdom of Wolfheart was in a state of anxiety, he simply had no time to care about the affairs on the other side of the strait. "Do you want to ask His Holiness the Supreme Pontiff?" Taifun asked. Maine slightly shook his head, completely suppressing the surging feeling of powerlessness in his heart. Perhaps this was God's test for the church. Only by cutting through thorns and thorns could they see the truth of God. He opened his eyes, once again regaining his calmness. "Hermes, I'll leave the holy city to you and Heather." "Don't tell me you want to go to the fjords." The old bishop stared. "I will lead the 100 gods' punishment army soldiers and the pure witches to thoroughly clean up the western territory of Greycastle, and then look for an opportunity to deal with the witches of the fjords." "But the law says," Maine interrupted, "that is the case when extraordinary people appear in the Four Kingdoms. Now that they are far away from the sea, they won't have any impact on our plan. Don't forget, our ultimate goal is to obtain more land and population, and continue to expand the scale of the gods' punishment army. Obviously, the fourth prince of Greycastle will hinder us even more." But just as Taifun was about to refute, the sound of hurried footsteps came from outside the ring-shaped hall. The two were slightly startled, and simultaneously looked towards the door. They saw the door being pushed open with a bang, and a priest rushed in a panic. "Not good, Your Excellency, not good." "Calm down." Maine shouted, "What's the matter? Say it slowly." "Lady Heather's entourage has sent urgent information. A huge fleet has landed on the coast of the Kingdom of Eternal Winter, and a large group of enemies are besieging King's City. The situation is precarious. The enemy's ships are all uniformly hanging black sails, and the flag on the mast is a green flag with a sailboat crown." The priest looked very anxious. When the news was sent, the 2 city gates had already been lost, and Lady Heather is leading the believers to resist, but the enemy is numerous, and they have also used berserk pills. "What?" For a moment, Maine couldn't believe his ears. Black sails, sailboat crown pattern. Chapter 250. The granite steps of the Eternal Winter King's City Temple were stained red with blood, and the sweet smell of blood in the air was somewhat pungent. There were many corpses lying on the ground. Some of them were from the gods' punishment army, some of the believers, some of their own people, and some of the Majin clan's Sand Nation. They died in different ways. Most of them had burn marks on their bodies, with broken limbs and internal organs scattered everywhere. Ryan knew that they had died from the impact and burning of the strong snow powder. Every time he stepped on a step, he would feel a kind of sticky feeling under his feet. The fighting will of the church's army of judges and believers could simply be described as crazy. Even in the face of the many strengthened slaves, they still didn't retreat, using their bodies as shields to entangle the enemy, just to give their companions the opportunity to stab a fatal blow. Although the pill could make people full of strength and make them fearless of pain, but the heart, neck, and head were still vital points. Her Majesty the Queen didn't have extra armor to arm these cheap slaves. If it weren't for the snow powder, the outcome of the battle might really be hard to say. But we won. Ryan's heart was burning hot. We won in the end. The flag of the Queen of Clearwater was fluttering at the top of the city wall. Even the church's most fortified stronghold couldn't withstand this wave of attack. In this way, the Black Sail fleet got rid of the deadlock of being besieged in a corner of Grey Castle, and didn't need to exhaust their vitality in the endless war of attrition with Timothy. The hall of the temple was also in a mess. The ground was full of broken glass fragments and flowing blood, but he didn't care about it. He went straight to the center of the hall, in front of the woman in high spirits, and knelt down on one knee. Your Majesty, the 4 city gates have all fallen into the hands of the Black Sail fleet. The kingdom of eternal winter is now yours. You've worked hard, get up. Garcia extended her hand in front of him. Ryan gently held the Queen's hand, symbolically kissed the back of her fingers, then got up and stood at her side. Strange etiquette, Kabbalah suddenly said from the side. You haven't even touched her hand. Why do you have to put on such an appearance? This question was so abrupt that he couldn't help but frown, but the other party was the patriarch of the Sandstone clan, so he couldn't reprimand her in public for her rudeness, so he coldly said, "This is a common etiquette between nobles. It represents politeness and respect. It would be rude to touch it. As a Sand nation, it is normal for you to not understand." Really? She raised her eyebrows and pointed to her neck. We're clearly allies who fought together, but we just ended the battle and you want to put this on me? The courtesy and respect of the mainlanders is really puzzling. Around Kabbalah's neck was a ring of iron bars, with a bulge in the middle. At first glance, it looked like a decoration, but Ryan knew that there was a god's stone of retaliation wrapped inside. Apart from a special key, it was difficult to unlock the iron bars with any other means, and the key was in Garcia's hands. The other party was a witch, so he naturally had to treat her with caution. However, she did contribute a lot in the battle. If it wasn't for her command, those slaves with strong snow powder wouldn't have dared to rush into the tight defensive line formed by the believers. He opened his mouth but did not know how to refute. "Come on, don't argue over such a trivial matter," Garcia interrupted. "Don't forget why we're here. Compared to the vast land of survival, can't you even bear a stone?" "I'm just saying." Kabbalah shrugged. "I hope you'll keep your promise." "Of course, this is the basis of our cooperation." The Queen smiled. "What should we do next with Black Sail?" Ryan asked. "We'll talk about the next step of the plan later, but for now, let's watch a good show." Garcia clapped her hands and ordered the guards, "Bring her in." Soon, 2 armored guards walked into the temple with a woman whose hands were tied behind her back. She looked to be about 30 years old, with an ordinary appearance. Her brown hair was scattered messily on both sides of her cheeks, and she was wearing a golden church robe. This kind of exquisite workmanship and exquisite material was usually only worn by the Bishop of Hermes. At this moment, the gorgeous robe was torn in several places, and the edges were stained with blood. "This person is a bishop?" "Yes," the Queen of Clearwater curled up the corner of her mouth. "I've already asked the local nobles to confirm. She is one of the 3 archbishops of the church, Lady Heather." She looked at the other side. "What do you think, am I right?" Heather didn't answer, but Ryan could see from her eyes a strong sense of ridicule and disdain. Apparently, Garcia also felt this. She chuckled twice. "I also thought that you wouldn't surrender, so with a merciful idea, I brought you to the temple, and here I will send you back to the kingdom of God. You can slowly beg for God's salvation, or you can beg me for forgiveness. I will slowly cut off your fingers, limbs, and facial features, so that you can fully experience the pain and helplessness of the people of the port of Clearwater. And then?" The female bishop unexpectedly asked, "Will I be crushed into powder by the church's army?" Or do you plan to drift on the sea for the rest of your life, never to reach the shore? You don't have to worry about this, Garcia signaled the guards to start. In contrast, the church's army is now attacking the Wolfshart city, and Hermes is like an undefended city, which is much more important than my fate. I may not be able to set foot on the land of the new holy city, but I can still raise the old holy city under the plateau to ruins. You should have heard that the Styx River in the extreme south of Greycastle is extremely easy to ignite, and is very difficult to extinguish. This time, I brought a whole boat with me. The guard pulled out a dagger, approached the bishop who was pressed to the ground, and neatly cut off 2 of her fingers. Heather clenched her teeth, not letting out a cry of pain. The Queen of Clearwater stepped onto the main stairs of the hall, sat on the spacious throne, supported her chin with her right hand, and revealed an expression of great interest. Another 3 fingers were cut off, this time the other party's left hand had become a bare palm. Heather's forehead was covered with beads of sweat. Do you have to do this? Kabbalah shook her head. If it wasn't to deter the enemy or to torture for information, this kind of pure torture is unnecessary. Unnecessary? Garcia laughed. You should say this to her. Do you know how the witches who fall into the hands of the church are treated? I guess you won't be interested to know. Ha ha ha. At this moment, Heather, who had lost all 10 fingers, suddenly laughed. You simply don't understand the greatness of the church, and you also don't understand how important everything the holy city has done. You are always accompanied by ignorance, but you are completely ignorant of the impending destruction. Hermes will let you see what is called real power. Those who go against the church, except for destruction, there is no second ending. Is that so? Garcia crossed her legs, smiled, and said, then I'll wait and see. Until the archbishop died, she still didn't cry out a single word for mercy. But to Ryan's surprise, she also didn't call out the name of God, hoping for his salvation. Finally, due to excessive blood loss, when Heather was about to lose consciousness, her expression was terrifyingly cold. It didn't look like she was being tortured, but rather like she was watching a farce that had nothing to do with her. Through those eyes, Ryan seemed to see his own destined future. This kind of feeling made him feel inexplicably depressed, almost making him unable to breathe. Cut off her head and hang it at the entrance of the church. After confirming the bishop's death, Garcia ordered. Then she looked at Ryan. Now we can talk about the next step of the plan. Yes, Your Majesty, he forced down the discomfort in his heart. Are you going to attack Hermes? That's right, but not the whole army. She spread out a leather map that she always carried with her. The Black Sail Fleet will only leave a small number of sailors and some of the eastern slaves. They will operate the fleet along the river westward, heading towards the old holy city. But we will directly go south, crossing the border of the Kingdom of Endless Winter. Our destination is the Wolfshart city. Wolfshart? Ryan was startled. I have reached an agreement with the Wolf King Wolf, Garcia said bluntly. If I can help him thwart the church's attack, he will assist me in occupying the whole territory of the Kingdom of Endless Winter. In this way, if the church does not withdraw their troops, the strong snow powder and water from the Styx River on the ships will be enough to turn the old holy city into a sea of fire. But the new holy city is different. It is a city without walls. If we don't gather enough manpower, we will simply be unable to stop the attacks of the slaves from all directions. If they retreat, the Wolfshart city will be able to get some breathing space. Moreover, the two countries are bordering each other, so in the future we can join hands to fight against the church. Chapter 251. Seeing that the midsummer day was coming to an end, Border Town was about to usher in the last month of summer, which was also the hottest month. Roland increasingly didn't want to leave the castle. The saltpeter he had bought from Marjorie, in addition to making gunpowder, was used to lower the room temperature. Now, in almost every room, there was a bucket filled with saltpeter, and inside the bucket there was a kettle soaking. In this way, not only could he absorb the heat and cool down, but he could also drink ice water to quench his thirst. Only in this way, he wouldn't have to sit in the office every day, sweating profusely. In addition to Anna, the rest of the witches were also suspended from their work. In addition to the daily practice and study, they basically gathered in the hall on the first floor. They were either chatting or playing Gwent with each other. It was a happy and harmonious atmosphere. As for Anna, it wasn't that Roland didn't want her to rest, but she simply wasn't afraid of the heat. She could even directly hold the red-hot iron ingot in her hands. The high temperature of the scorching summer was nothing to her. Even if she were to stand by the steel-making furnace for the whole afternoon, she wouldn't shed a drop of sweat. In order to reward the diligent and serious Anna, Roland had recently specially made some frozen desserts to reward her. For example, the classic delicious ice cream of later generations was made by mixing egg yolk, cream, milk and sugar water and stirring them evenly, then cooling them with saltpeter. Anna was very fond of this cold, soft and fragrant snack. Every time she took a small bite of the ice cream, the way her lake blue eyes curved into a line, made him feel very pleasing to the eye. In addition, looking through the monthly summary tables sent by the City Hall was also a great pleasure for his mood. So far, the population of Border Town had doubled once again, and it was already close to 18,000 people. In addition, Longsong's stronghold would turn in a batch of serfs every month, so it wouldn't be a problem to break through the 20,000 mark next year. Not counting the number of villages and towns within the territory, this scale was almost comparable to that of Redwater City, Valencia and King City. What was slightly regrettable was that the population had increased quite a bit, but the quality of the population had not improved much. Currently, it was still the town's 1,000 or so natives who were receiving education, and it was very likely that it would take about a year for them to successfully graduate. Although the private academy that Carr previously opened had produced a batch of talents who graduated ahead of time, the number of less than 100 was still insignificant compared to the total population. Maybe I should start educating the refugees in the eastern region first, instead of waiting for enough dormitories to be built. Roland thought to himself. After all, there were only advantages to early education. The development of the town's factories was also very good. After more than half a year of construction, the industrial park now had 3 factories in operation, 2 steam engine production plants and 1 bullet processing plant. The number of workers in the No. 1 factory had expanded from a dozen blacksmiths when it was first established to more than 100 now. Those who joined later were basically natives, which was exactly what he wanted to see. A batch of apprentices would gradually grow into craftsmen, and then lead the next batch of apprentices. The workers in the No. 2 factory belonged to the Crescent Moon Bay Caravan. In just 1 month, they had roughly mastered the use of each machine tool. Although the yield was relatively bad, compared to the blacksmiths in the No. 1 factory, the performance of these craftsmen in the first month was obviously better. But before the expiration of the contract, the steam engines they produced were all owned by Roland. Now the 2 factories could produce about 8 to 10 steam engines every month, which was also the main income of Border Town. As for the bullet factory, after it was completed, it was directly handed over to the First Army. Not only was there a sentry post at the entrance, but there were also patrols arranged around it. Even the production work was handled by the soldiers. After a week of trial operation, the new generation of fixed bullets had begun to be mass-produced. The assembly line designed by Roland couldn't achieve full mechanical production. Whether it was the primer, gunpowder, or warheads, they all needed to be filled and compacted by manpower. The main processing tools were 2 mechanical stamping machines. One was used to press the copper cut by Anna into the shape of a cartridge case, and the other was used to press the primer cup. The soldiers only needed to evenly place the mercury fulminate powder between 2 thin pieces of paper, stick the paper tightly, clamp it into the primer cup, and finally insert the primer cup into the annular groove at the end of the cartridge case. As for the process of loading the black powder and compacting the warhead, it was exactly the same as the previous reloading exercise. There weren't many people in the factory, only 40, but almost every day they could produce more than 500 rounds of bullets. Roland intended to turn these 40 people into full-time processing staff in order to maintain the normal operation of the bullet factory. Next, Roland planned to make up for the soap factory and the perfume factory. The former was an extremely important part of the military industry, and the latter might be able to open up a new trade channel for the town. As for the bicycle factory, it could be delayed, as long as it could be put into production before the kingdom main street was repaired. Your Royal Highness, Nightingale pushed open the door. Maggie and Lightning have arrived. The two walked past Nightingale, ran to the table and poked their heads out. Is there something you need from us? Tomorrow is the summer season. Roland took out the long written reply from the drawer and handed it to Maggie. When you return to the fjords, remember to pass this to Tilly for me. Ah. She was stunned for a moment, blinked a few times, then took the envelope and carefully stuffed it into her close-fitting bag. No problem, Coo. Seeing the look of realization on the other party's face, Roland knew that he probably didn't remember that he had to go back every month to report the news. It seemed that the town was really charming. I forgot that tomorrow is a new month. Lightning pressed her forehead. Doesn't that mean we won't be able to see each other for a long time? Last time I was delayed because of Lady Tilly's cleaning plan. This time I will come back as soon as possible. Maggie shook her long white hair that was almost dragging on the ground. That eagle's nest has to wait for me to come back before I can explore it. Coo. I know, the little girl curled her lips. It's a deal. You also have a task. Roland spread out a map of the southern area of the town. This is the map you drew yourself. Do you still remember the location of the shoal near the mountain ridge? I remember. Lightning gestured on the map. It's probably in this place. Very well. Later you will take Maggie to fly once, and then at the intersection of the shoal and the mountain ridge plant 2 flags, and mark it on the map. After he finished explaining, he looked at Maggie. If Tilly agrees to send witches, you can lead the sailboat to this shoal. I will meet you at the top of the mountain. Send witches? Lightning asked curiously. Is there a new sister coming to Border Town? Chapter 252. The day after Maggie's departure, Roland took the witches to the courtyard and began to assemble the new generation of hot air balloons. Since the back garden and the witch dormitory were being expanded, Leaf had already moved the plants to the front yard. All kinds of vines covered the walls, wooden shelves and corridors, giving the impression of a prehistoric forest. The effect of shading the sun was also very obvious. The sun could only pass through the gaps between the dense green leaves, leaving scattered spots of light on the ground. Roland gave the witches a stack of white paper, letting them spread it out into a huge sheet of paper, and then let Soroya paint the lightest blue sky coating. Compared to the combination of bovine mesentery and canvas used in the first generation of hot air balloons, the pure coating was much lighter and had excellent toughness. There were no sutures at the joints, so there was no fear of the balloon disintegrating in the air. I heard from Lightning that there might be witches coming from the fjords. Vendi asked curiously. If everything goes well, Roland repeated the contents of the 5th princess's reply. The specific situation will have to wait for Tilly Wimbledon's reply. It seems that Ashes succeeded, she said thoughtfully. There are unexpectedly so many witches gathered on Sleeping Island. Yes, I'm afraid that Tilly has been planning this migration for more than 1 or 2 years, Roland said. Not only in Greycastle, but also in the other 3 kingdoms she has sent witches to secretly contact. The Witch Cooperation Association should have also received her invitation. I guess this is why the guards have been spreading rumors for such a long time, but no witches have come to the door. After all, they are one step slower than Tilly. But Kara has never mentioned this to us. Vendi rubbed her shoulders. If she had told you about Tilly's invitation, maybe you wouldn't have insisted on looking for the Holy Mountain, right? There is indeed such a possibility, but in that case, we wouldn't have met in Border Town. She smiled and shook her head. So, this is also not bad. I also think it's pretty good. Lightning raised her hand. TSK, maybe it would be better to go to the fjords. Lily curled her lips. After all, there are only witches there, so you don't need to pay extra attention to your surroundings like in Border Town. It's much better than before, Anna said seriously. I didn't even dare to go out then. That's right, some people are just like that. Obviously, when Ashes invited me last time, she also flatly refused, but still put on an act. Mystery Moon muttered, and she still says she's not a traitor. You. Lily's eyes widened. Idiot. Traitor. The other witches couldn't help but laugh. I also think so. Roland suddenly felt a sense of accomplishment welling up in his heart. Even if he wasn't as smart and quick-witted as the fifth princess, and wasn't as strong and decisive as Timothy and Garcia, but at least, he could give these witches a free and comfortable living environment, and also bring a better life for the people under his rule. This hot air balloon. I'm afraid it's several times bigger than the last one. Nightingale looked at the part that Soroya had already drawn. Are you going to use it to transport the witches? He nodded. Only in this way can we avoid the seaport city and directly enter the border from the southern end of border town. Moreover, in addition to sending and receiving new visitors, it can also be regarded as a new attempt. After the paper was coated on both sides, it became a sandwich cloth. Each piece was nearly 6 meters long and wide. If it was a conventional canvas or linen, it would have been very difficult to drag it with one hand, but for the light coating, it was almost the same weight as a stack of paper. By piecing together more than a dozen pieces of cloth, and then gluing the seams with the coating, a giant airbag of astonishing size was made. What Roland wanted to test was the adhesion ability of Soroya's coating. At the very least, when he first saw her new ability, the thick bark half-drawn on the table was still fresh in his mind. The two were firmly glued together, and by pulling the bark upwards, he could even lift the whole square table. In the end, how tightly the coating and the base could adhere, whether it could support a huge airbag, and after inflating, maintain its firmness and airtightness, these were all things he wanted to know. At present, the hot air balloon still needed to rely on Anna to inflate, but the hydrogen balloon could be operated by anyone. Now that he had a DC motor, he could produce hydrogen by electrolyzing water, and it seemed that the famous Zeppelin airship wasn't far away from him. As long as he found a suitable lightweight skeleton material, this huge monster that could fly at a height of 2 to 3 kilometers would have almost no natural enemies, and the technical difficulty would be much lower than that of an airplane. Although the hit rate of dropping a bomb at an altitude of a kilometer was very touching, it wouldn't be able to stop the enemy from only being able to take a beating without being able to fight back. Every day, he would be able to wander around the enemy's territory, and perhaps any opponent would collapse. Just imagining it, in the future, when he went on an expedition to the church's holy city, there would be 4 or 5 airships floating side by side in the air, bombs falling like raindrops, and there would be shallow water gunships bombarding the enemy's city gates and strongholds in the river. In addition, there would be infantrymen armed with flintlocks waiting in the rear, and the 3 armies of the sea, land, and air would cooperate in battle. Just imagining it made him a little excited. Your Royal Highness, what are you giggling about? Anna sighed, reaching out to cover the corner of his mouth that he couldn't help but grin. He's probably fantasizing about the new witches. Lily rolled her eyes. Well, men, when the bottom of the airbag was connected to a huge vine basket with hemp ropes, the new generation of hot air balloon was successfully completed. Its volume was nearly 4 times larger than the first generation, and the number of people it could accommodate was also expanded to 10. Above the basket, there was also a sunshade, which could avoid direct sunlight. Of course, there was a need to leave a hole in the sunshade, so that Anna could add heat to the balloon. Roland named the balloon Cloud Gazer, and after the completion of the heavy load test in the open space of the courtyard, the next day they officially started their first voyage. In addition to Anna, Vendi, and the other 3 witches, there was also the prince himself who participated in this test flight. The whole process of the voyage went very smoothly, and the witches were chattering non-stop in the air, sighing at the spectacular scenery they saw from the sky. Compared to the last time when they had to observe from a fixed point, this sightseeing tour that was constantly moving obviously aroused everyone's interest. Cloud Gazer, under the influence of Vendi's steady wind, advanced towards the south, and at noon they arrived at the mountainous area, crossed over the top of the mountain where the flag was raised, and finally hovered above the coastline. After flying in a circle near the shoal, the party returned to the castle with Cloud Gazer. Roland noticed that Vendi, who was responsible for controlling the direction, was beating her shoulder from time to time, looking very tired. Chapter 253. As the Lord of the Western Region, Roland naturally didn't have to do it himself, he only needed to draw a rough shape on paper and then clearly explain it to the tailor. Although he hadn't personally touched a bra, but he had seen it in all kinds of commercials, TV programs and movies, so there were only a few styles. He chose the most common shoulder strap buckle style, with 3 sets of copper hooks, which allowed him to choose the looseness within a certain range. This kind of thing needed to be worn close to the body in order to meet the requirements of a corset, so Roland also called the castle's maid to let the tailor measure the size. The maid had been cutting clothes for many years, so she was very experienced. After listening to His Royal Highness' explanation, she immediately understood the role of a bra, and according to the actual measurement results, divided the bra size into several grades, and then subdivided the adjustment range. In fact, in this era, the prototype of the bra had already appeared, which was the corset. But it wasn't to make women more comfortable, but to tighten the waist as much as possible, and prop up the chest, so that the figure appeared to be hourglass-shaped. Those gorgeous aristocratic dresses were also designed according to the slender waist. Without the assistance of the corset, it would be very difficult for the average woman to wear this kind of extremely thin waistline dress. Too much pressure on the waist would bring an extremely uncomfortable experience, and in severe cases, it would even affect blood circulation and lead to fainting. In addition to supporting the chest, the bra could also play a fixed role and reduce the role of tremors, so wearing it on a daily basis would only make women more relaxed. In only 2 days, the old tailor had cut out 20 bras, using the silk and cotton materials provided by Roland, which were both beautiful and breathable, and the workmanship was exceptionally fine. But before Roland could deliver this gift to the witches, the caravan from King's City arrived in Border Town. Compared to the previous month, this time the caravan was not only late, but also far smaller than the last time. When the sailboats docked at the expanded pier of Border Town, there was even a sense of sparseness. "Your Royal Highness, we meet again," Marjorie said with a smile. "Welcome, you've worked hard to transport the fugitives." Roland looked at the caravan by the river. "This time there seems to be a lot less sailboats?" "Because of some unexpected reasons." She wiped the sweat from her forehead. "If you don't mind, let's go to the drawing room to talk." "It's too hot here." "I think so too," muttered Hogg. "I'm a Grey Castle man through and through, and this weather is killing me. If it wasn't for the first steam engine, I wouldn't even want to leave home." Roland nodded and led the group back to the castle. Walking into the hall, Hogg immediately felt a chill on his face. He let out a long sigh. "Thank the gods for letting us discover such a beautiful thing. If I hadn't seen the production process of Ice Ray with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed that it was produced from feces. Oh, and ice water. Your Highness, may I?" Of course, Roland gestured for her to begin and returned to his seat. He then asked the female merchant, "So, what accident caused the sharp decrease in this month's shipments of saltpeter?" According to the contract, she was supposed to provide at least 3 ships of saltpeter to Border Town every month, but this time, there was only 1 ship carrying saltpeter. Because of King's City's Alchemist Association, they have recently been purchasing saltpeter. The price isn't high, but they have the support of the former Prime Minister, Marquis Wyke, so this isn't a pure transaction. The merchants have no choice but to sell. Marjorie spread her hands and said, "I guess this might be Timothy's idea. After all, he and the Prime Minister are practically breathing out of the same nostrils." "Timothy?" Roland asked, puzzled. "Didn't he go to the Southern Territory?" "Indeed," she nodded. "It seems that Theo has already told you the news. I heard that before he left King's City, he also took a lot of people and supplies with him. In all likelihood, he went to find trouble with Garcia. Not long after he left, the Alchemist Association began to purchase saltpeter." Roland knew more about this matter. Arranging Theo to work in King's City was indeed effective. At first, he only received the news that Timothy was summoning the underground rats. In order to prevent the other side from suddenly attacking, he also specifically asked Perrault to strengthen the defense of Longsong's stronghold. However, the next secret letter from his personal guard made Roland feel a little relieved. Timothy had gone straight to the Southern Territory. Obviously, this recruitment wasn't aimed at him. Regarding the use of this group of rats, Roland and his personal guard had the same opinion. That was, they weren't suitable for frontal combat, and their discipline was even worse than that of civilians and serfs. Therefore, Timothy's method of using this group of people was inevitably the same as last time. First, he would use drugs to make them addicted, and then force them to go forward and kill the enemy. This tactic of repeatedly using cannon fodder to deplete the opponent's strength was actually a safe strategy for the new king, who owned 2/3 of Greycastle's territory. But why did the Alchemist Association suddenly want to purchase a large amount of saltpeter? Snow powder was originally one of their key products, but the wrong ratio had led to it being only used in the ceremonial barrel. Now, had they discovered the correct formula for gunpowder and were planning to mass produce it, or were they trying to determine the best ratio through a large number of experiments? Roland shook his head and put aside the doubts that emerged in his mind. It was meaningless to speculate about these things. As soon as possible, he had to complete the industrial production of 3 acids and 2 alkalis, and then switch to more advanced chemical gunpowder. So, next month's supply of saltpeter can't be guaranteed for 3 ships. I don't know. Although Marjorie looked a little embarrassed, she still bluntly said, I spent a lot of effort to transport this ship to the Western Territory, buying it from Silver City. Now is the hottest time of summer, and the demand for saltpeter is very high, so I'm not sure how much I can buy. If it was any other season, I could guarantee a supply for 3 ships. I understand. Roland drank a mouthful of ice water. Then next month, try your best. If you can't, don't force yourself. I have new goods that I need to purchase from you. Oh. Margaret heaved a sigh of relief. What is it? Is it still ore? The washing stone used to wash clothes, he replied. It looks like a white cloudy crystal or a stone pillar. When soaked in water, it will give off a greasy feeling. This kind of thing is not uncommon in the King's City hotels. Sure enough, it's ore again, the female merchant smiled helplessly. Obviously, your territory has a large mine, but the goods you purchase are all minerals. It's really hard to understand. Well, this thing is indeed quite a lot, and the price is not expensive. What do you plan to do with it? Naturally, it's to make it more convenient to wash clothes, Roland smiled. The washing stone was something he found from the 4th prince's memory. Its essence was a kind of natural alkali, mainly composed of sodium bicarbonate. It had a strong decontamination effect. Together with plant ash and pancreas, it was known as one of the 3 ancient cleaning tools. In the absence of an ion exchange membrane, the efficiency of collecting sodium hydroxide by electrolysis of salt water was extremely low, and salt was also not cheap. So he planned to directly purchase natural alkali to make caustic soda. With enough caustic soda, it would be possible to mass-produce soap, and soap's byproduct, glycerin. Chapter 254. Your Royal Highness, I wanted to ask you when I came through the door. Hogg showed an expression as if he had finally caught his breath. The kettle of ice water in the wooden barrel had already been emptied by him, the painting in the hall. I'm afraid it's not something an ordinary person can draw, right? Whether it's the degree of realism or the perspective of looking down from the sky. He paused, then lowered his voice and asked, Is this the work of a witch? Roland looked at Marjorie, the latter nodded. Your Royal Highness, please rest assured, Hogg is an old friend I have known for many years. He also has no malicious intent towards witches. You guessed right, it was indeed drawn by a witch. 2 days ago, Roland had ridden a hot air balloon to sightsee near the beach, so he wanted to preserve this magnificent scene of beauty. Moreover, the castle's living room was simply decorated, there wasn't even a single painting, so he simply let Soroya turn the stone wall behind the main seat into a huge mural. With the artistic background wall, the style of the hall instantly rose by several levels. I knew it, Hogg sighed, although they are advertised as the devil's minions, but those strange abilities are really enviable. Ordinary people can't fly in the air like them, and then draw such a beautiful and peerless mural. You only got the first half of the sentence right. Roland shook his head. Even if ordinary people don't rely on magic, they can still fly. They can even fly higher than eagles, and fly faster than swallows. You're really humorous, Hog laughed. Only if we have an extra pair of wings, and become lighter than birds. Marjorie was startled. Really? Of course, the prince said with a smile, I can prove it to you. Letting the merchants see their various inventions was also an effective way to improve relations and expand trade routes, from the mugs to the liquor. As for whether they could sell it or not, that was another matter. In any case, the caravan would stay in border town for a few days, so the regular business negotiation process should be about eating, drinking, and having fun, and finally signing. Moreover, Anna was also very interested in traveling by hot air balloon. It just so happened that she could take a break from her busy work and rest for a while. It could be said to be killing two birds with one stone. Cloud Gazer quickly finished inflating, and for this voyage, Roland simply called the witches who hadn't been able to ride the hot air balloon last time. Lucia also timidly asked if she could take her younger sister to take a look, and he readily agreed. When the balloon slowly rose with everyone, Marjorie covered her mouth in surprise, while Hog tightly grasped the edge of the basket, not knowing whether he was excited or afraid. Belle was too short to see the scenery outside the basket, so Lucia had to pick her up and put her on her shoulder. She carefully approached the basket and told her not to move. As the navigator and rescuer, Lightning kept circling around the hot air balloon, making faces at Belle from time to time. Just like that, the hot air balloon once again circled the southern coastline, completing its aerial sightseeing tour. After returning to the castle, Hog's legs were still trembling, and he stammered, I never thought that looking down from the sky would actually be so frightening. I felt as if I could fall at any time. You'll get better after flying a few more times, Roland said with a smile. The people whose feet leave the ground for the first time will have this kind of illusion, just like people who have never gone to sea, will also vomit on a bumpy ship. You're right, Marjorie exclaimed in admiration. The scenery we saw today was really incredible. Looking at the edge of the sea from the sky, it unexpectedly looked like a blue arc. However, Your Highness, it seems that what I said wasn't wrong. Hog drank a mouthful of iced white wine. Ordinary people can indeed fly to the sky, but this is still the credit of the witches. If it weren't for them, this big guy wouldn't have been able to fly. No, my old friend, Roland hadn't even opened his mouth, when Marjorie rushed to speak first. Don't tell me you haven't noticed. Miss Anna is only releasing flames, that's all. I also specifically asked Lightning. She told me that as long as the air bag is filled with hot air, the Cloud Gazer can rise to the sky by itself. Flames aren't the privilege of witches, Your Highness, am I right? She was indeed worthy of being a fjord sea merchant who had established a foothold in King's City. Whether it was her observation or her ability to think, she was exceptionally outstanding. Roland smiled and nodded. The hot air rises and the cold air sinks. This is also the reason why it's called a hot air balloon. You really only need to light a brazier to do it? Hog asked doubtfully. That won't do, because if you want it to float in the air, you must continue to heat it up, and the wood itself is very heavy. We can't carry too much, so we must use a special method to solve this problem. Can you do it? Marjorie couldn't wait to ask. Well, it should be possible, Roland thought for a moment. It's just a bit troublesome. That's great, she immediately said. I hope to buy 4 or 5 hot air balloons from you. They don't need to be too big, just enough to carry one person. Do you want to use them on the ship? Hog asked. Well, the mast can't be extended indefinitely, but the hot air balloon can, as long as we tie a rope under the basket, so that it doesn't float away with the wind. With the hot air balloon, the lookout can find nearby pirate ships earlier. For sea merchants, in addition to unpredictable storms and tsunamis, the biggest threat is a group of pirates. But I'm afraid the cost of it won't be too low, Roland estimated in his heart. I estimate that it will cost more than 1,000 golden dragon. If he didn't use the witch's heating, the hot air balloon would have to use gas as fuel, and the easiest to obtain would undoubtedly be gas. Unfortunately, Greycastle's coal mine was located in the Coldwind Ridge area, which was too far from border town, and according to the current traffic conditions, it was almost impossible to transport it. Replacing it with a hydrogen balloon would be easier to achieve, but at the same time, he would need to solve the problem of the gas storage tank. If he couldn't freely charge and release it, then it wouldn't have any practical value. How about 1,000 golden dragons for each balloon? Marjorie haggled. If you really make such a thing, I can guarantee that all the caravans that travel to and from the fjords will want to buy one or two. This time, the Crescent Moon Bay caravan didn't come, otherwise they would definitely place a large order. Hogg drank the white wine in his hand in one gulp. I don't need it, although the hot air balloon looks very magical, it has no use for the mines of Silver City. I only hope to get my steam engine as soon as possible. The price the other party offered made Roland overjoyed. 1,000 golden dragons was the price he had estimated after increasing the price by 5 times. He didn't expect that the other party would actually be willing to accept a price that was twice the price of the steam engine. However, when he thought about it carefully, the goods carried by a ship were likely to be worth more than this price, not to mention the entire merchant fleet and the sailors on board. As long as they could avoid the plundering of the pirates, this deal was still a good deal for the sea merchants. In addition, 1,000 golden dragons wasn't a one-time deal, whether it was hydrogen or gas, they were all consumables, and when they were used up they had to be brought back to border town to inflate, which was another extra income. Of course, if they bought a large number of gas tanks at once, they could consider giving them a discount or giving them a number of times to inflate. In this regard, the 4S shop and the 2 barrels of oil were examples he could learn and imitate. Chapter 255. The weather in the fjords was very strange. Yesterday it had been a cloudless blue sky, but today it was gloomy, with strong winds and thunder. It seemed that a rainstorm was coming. Ashes pressed down her hair, which had been blown loose, and walked into Tilly's residence. The first thing she saw was the giant pigeon sitting on her shoulder. Maggie? Coo! The pigeon raised its head and its eyes lit up. It spread its wings and flew straight to the door. Ashes reached out and easily stopped it. Turn into a human and talk. Woo, coo. Maggie fluttered to the ground, shed her feathers, and revealed her original appearance. She curled her lips and said, "Do you hate pigeons? I always think it's strange that a big bird can speak." Ashes smiled and pulled up the girl who was sitting on the ground. "When did you come back?" "Not long ago. I was afraid that I would encounter a storm, and my wings were about to break." She patted her chest. "Fortunately, I flew to Sleeping Island before the rain fell." "You flew back like this?" Ashes put her hand on her forehead. "Why didn't you turn into a petrel? Wouldn't it be much faster?" "Ah." Maggie suddenly realized and blinked. "I forgot, coo." Tilly could not help but laugh out loud. She put down the letter in her hand and said, "Thank you for your hard work. I've already heard the news from the other side. Go and play with Lotus and Molly. I'll let you know when I've thought of a reply." "Okay, coo." Maggie bowed and bounced out. What did Roland Wimbledon say? When there were only 2 people in the room, Ashes walked to Tilly and sat down on the ground. There was a map spread in front of her. After looking at it carefully, it seemed to be a topographic map of the vicinity of border town. "This is his letter." Tilly handed her a piece of paper. "I have to say, the witches he chose are really special." Ashes quickly read the letter and could not help but frown. He actually chose Sylvie. Does he not care about being exposed at all? "I don't know," Tilly said noncommittally. "Maybe my ability notes were too vague, so he didn't look into it at all. Or does he not mind revealing his identity in front of us to show his sincerity in cooperating with us? Of course, there's another possibility. He really is your brother," Ashes continued, "so he doesn't care about Sylvie's ability at all. But the possibility is very small." She laughed at herself. "Who knows better than me what kind of person my brother is? If it was really Roland Wimbledon, he would never choose to become the enemy of the church just to protect the witches. Ever since he was young, what he was best at was escaping, whether it was in the face of challenges or difficulties. Even when he was transferred to the borderlands by the order to fight for the throne, I have never seen him protest to his father, even symbolically. Ashes raised her eyebrows. In short, it's a good thing for us that he took the initiative to choose Sylvie, so we don't have to find an excuse to send another witch out. But the other witches? Are you really going to agree with him? Why not? Lotus is one of the most important witches on Sleeping Island. If she's not here, who will repair those mud houses? If we want to build something or transform the island's terrain, it will be very inconvenient without the ability to reshape the terrain. After all, we have only used less than 30% of the entire Sleeping Island, and there are still many places that can be transformed. She counted with her fingers. Honey, too, can drive the osprey to catch fish for everyone. The delicious fish soup that everyone enjoys every day is all thanks to her. As for Candle and Evelyn, there are not many problems. Can't you refuse his request and send 2 witches who are not very useful? What is useful and what is not? I sent them to Border Town in the hope of forming an alliance with the other side, not abandoning them. Tilly looked a little serious. No matter what their abilities are, the sisters who choose to come to this island are all witches. If we want to build Sleeping Island into a home for witches, how can we select them according to how useful their abilities are? Ashes had seen her show such an expression in the palace. This was the expression of the 5th princess when she was really angry. She couldn't help but change the way she addressed her. I'm sorry. Your Highness, I'm just... Tilly sighed and slowly said, besides, it's difficult to measure everyone's abilities by a certain standard. Roland chose these 5 witches from more than 100, including Candle and Evelyn, who you said were not very useful. Are they really useless? Perhaps through this contact, we can figure out whether his purpose in choosing these 2 witches was accidental, or he saw something we didn't realize. She paused. In any case, we are a very small part of the population. Any witch is worth fighting for. They are not tools for building a home, but partners with a common goal. In the future, don't say such things. Yes, Your Highness. Ashes bowed her head. At this moment, a lightning pierced through the clouds and fell straight on the sea. As if it was a command from God, a deafening thunder followed, exploding above Sleeping Island. Rain fell from the sky. At first, it was a sparse dripping sound, but soon it became a continuous noise. The dense rain curtain made the scenery outside the window covered with a layer of white mist. The rain was so heavy that it even covered the sound of the conversation between the 2. Ashes got up and closed the window to prevent the rain from drifting into the room. Looking back, she saw Tilly swaying twice, looking a little haggard. Did you stay up late again last night? Well, Tilly yawned. The books I brought back from the ruins are all written in the same language, and I've already found a common point among them. As long as I have enough time, I'll definitely be able to translate them all. Yes, in time, we have already gotten rid of the church's entanglement, so we have plenty of time. You don't need to study it all night long. Ashes frowned. It will have a great impact on your body. Don't worry, I am an extraordinary witch, my body won't collapse so easily. Princess Tilly took a deep breath. Moreover, I have a faint premonition. The scene I saw in the ruins made me feel uneasy. It is better to decipher the contents of these books as soon as possible. By the way, when the witches go to Border Town, let them also bring an ancient book. If even you can't understand it, then the witches of the Witch Cooperation Association will be even more impossible. I'm just trying my luck, Tilly said. I heard that there are also ancient ruins in the Eastern Forest, and the origin of the Witch Cooperation Association is in Sewanshire, which is almost next to the forest. Maybe one of them has seen this kind of writing. If we can prove that the 2 languages are the same, it means that these ruins are all written by the same people. Yes, I know, Ashes replied. In addition, I am not blaming you before, what you said is also reasonable, but it is not about the role of the ability. She stretched out her hand to stop Ashes from speaking. I have reached an agreement with the Chamber of Commerce of Crescent Moon Bay. They will separate a part of the ordinary people to migrate to Sleeping Island next spring. If Lotus leaves for too long, it will indeed affect the follow-up construction of the island, so before the arrival of winter, I will let them return to the fjords. Ashes breathed a sigh of relief. That's good. But in order to avoid misunderstandings, I will also lead a few combat witches to replace them in going to Border Town to help the Witch Cooperation Association resist the months of demons. Tilly revealed a sly smile. When the time comes, are you willing to go with me? Chapter 256. The storm came and went quickly. The group set off on the second day after the rain stopped, and the ship responsible for sending them to Grey Castle was the Charming Beauty. Sylvie leaned against the railing of the ship, took out a piece of beef jerky from the cloth bag, raised it above her head and shook it. Oh! A huge seagull fell from the sky accompanied by a cry, the airflow caused by its wings made her squint, and the jerky in her hand was taken away. When she raised her head, the seagull had returned to the front of the sailboat, continuing to lead the way in the vast sea. This was what Maggie had asked her to do, because when she turned into a bird, she couldn't take out her own jerky to eat. Although at this time her appearance was no different from an ordinary seagull, except for the body shape, but Sylvie could see the magic surging within the other's body and its true form. If she looked closely, she could also see the magic gathering from all directions, turning into spots of light and disappearing. I heard that she can not only transform into different birds, but also obtain the corresponding ability. Someone behind her said in amazement, as far as I know, a seagull will never get lost in the sea, and can even sense the arrival of a storm in advance. Indeed, Mr. Captain, even without looking back, Sylvie could clearly know who it was. Otherwise, we wouldn't dare to rashly choose a new route, bypassing the endless cape and landing southwest of Grey Castle. Her ability not only allowed her to observe the flow and changes of magic, but also gave her a wide field of vision without any blind spots. She could observe the movements around her at any time, and obstacles couldn't obstruct the extension of her line of sight. She could even see the lazy sailors sleeping under the deck, and the shoals of fish swimming under the ship. Is there also a port there? Captain Jack spat out a mouthful of smoke. I remember there were explorers who went to the west of the Endless Cape, but except for the cliffs and shoals, there was nothing there. It's better if there's nothing there, Sylvie said indifferently, so we can go back the way we came. Isn't that equivalent to a wasted trip? The captain shook his pipe. I'm looking forward to seeing something different on this new route. This trip was entrusted by Lady Tilly to go to another gathering place of witches to contact and help each other. In addition to the 5 selected witches, Ashes and Molly were also on board, but they didn't go ashore, just to ensure that the voyage was safe. Molly's magic servant could help the ship resist storms, while Ashes could make it so that any pirates who set their eyes on the ship would never be able to return. She also had another responsibility, which was to identify Roland Wimbledon's true identity for Lady Tilly. Before departing, Tilly had explained the cause of the matter in detail to her, as well as the possible results and methods to deal with it. Simply put, it was to reach an agreement with the leader of the Witch Cooperation Association, in exchange for Roland's real body. But to be honest, Sylvie always felt that this task would not be so easy to complete. If the Witch Cooperation Association did not agree, then it would be fine. But what if they didn't want the news to leak out and imprisoned her and the other 4 people? Looking through the cabin wall, seeing Lotus, Evelyn and the others happily playing with the magic servant, she couldn't help but sigh. I hope that the witches of the Witch Cooperation Association are really as warm and friendly as Maggie said. After sailing on the sea for nearly a week, Sylvie finally saw the grey coastline. We're almost there, Honey shouted while leaning on the side of the ship. Beside her, a row of petrels, ospreys and seagulls also joined in the noise. We're finally here. Candle was leaning on the side of the ship with a haggard face. I don't think I can hold on any longer. This is only a temporary phenomenon, child, as long as you go ashore, you will soon recover. Jack One Eye laughed while holding the telescope. I've been sailing for so many years, but I've never seen anyone die on board because of the turbulence. What about Maggie? Honey asked. She has already flown to Border Town ahead of time to contact the witches of the Witch Cooperation Association, Ashes answered her. I believe that they will soon send someone to pick you up. Sister Ashes, won't you come with us? Tilly needs my help, Ashes smiled. Don't worry, the witches of the Witch Cooperation Association will treat you as sisters. If you have any difficulties, you can find Vendi, she will definitely help you solve it. Vendi, Sylvie silently remembered this name in her heart. Yes, there is one more thing, Ashes patted her forehead, you must remember to stay away from Lord Roland Wimbledon, you must not easily be alone with him. Why, isn't he Lady Tilly's brother? Evelyn was puzzled. He is, Ashes said seriously, but this doesn't prevent him from touching the witch's buttocks. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The sailboat finally docked about half a mile away from the shoal. After all, there were no detailed sea charts here, so no one knew how deep the water at the shoal was. The way to go ashore was very simple, they didn't even need to release the landing boats. Molly directly let the servants wrap the 5 people, and together with herself, they floated on the sea surface. This shoal was obviously a part of the mountain, and under the constant erosion of the sea, it had become a soft sandy beach. Not far away was the towering mountains, completely separating the inland of Greycastle from the coast. The mountain range was endless, and the further west they went, the higher they became. At the end of their vision, it almost evolved into a huge mountain similar to the impassable mountain range. After waiting for almost an hour, Sylvie noticed a strange shadow approaching. Its size was very large, almost the same as the charming beauty, and its round outline obviously didn't seem to be a natural creation. It stood to reason that such a huge object should be extremely heavy, but its trajectory was quite smooth, as if it was floating in the air. Separated by the mountains and woods, she couldn't see it clearly, but this thing was indeed constantly climbing, and soon it would cross the mountains. After a while, it revealed its true appearance from behind the cover. Oh my God, what is that? Lotus looked at the sky in surprise and asked incredulously. Sister Ashes, have you ever seen this thing? Evelyn pulled her arm. No. Ashes also looked a little surprised, it's also the first time I've seen this thing. It seems that this is the way the Witch Cooperation Association welcomes us, Sylvie said with emotion. They saw an amazing spherical object floating in the air, with a basket made of vines hanging below it. Maggie and another witch, one on the left and one on the right, accompanied the basket as it flew. The most striking thing was that at the bottom of the basket was a long yellow canvas, on which several huge words were written. Chapter 257. After the basket landed, a witch who looked to be in her 30s, with red hair hanging down to her waist, stepped out of the basket and greeted them. Hello, welcome to Border Town, I'm Vendi. Then she looked at Ashes, revealing a happy smile. You've also come. Is she the witch that Ashes had mentioned before? Sylvie thoughtfully looked at the two, it seemed that they had known each other for a long time. Welcome, I'm Anna. The appearance of the other witch made Sylvie's eyes light up, her pair of blue eyes were as pure as a lake, really eye-catching. But what made her even more concerned was that the other party's magic was huge, vigorous, and almost flawless. A black, white, and gray cube slowly rotated, even the magic gathered from all around was distorted by it. How amazing is this power? It was the first time that Sylvie had seen such oppressive magic. Hi, my name is Lightning. The one who had originally flown next to the basket was this little girl. Maggie also followed closely behind and landed on her shoulder. Coo-coo. After Ashes had briefly introduced the witches of Sleeping Island, Vendi smiled and invited everyone to board the basket. This huge air sac above our heads is called a hot air balloon. As long as we can provide it with hot air, it can take us over the mountains and directly to our destination. She paused for a moment, then asked Ashes, do you really not want to go to Border Town to take a look? I think His Highness will also want to see you again. He will not welcome someone who intends to poach his witches. Ashes smiled. I'll have to trouble you to take care of these children. Is that so? Vendi looked a little regretful, pursing her lips. Rest assured, I will treat them well. Then everyone should hurry up, Anna reminded. Cloud Gazer is about to take off. Sylvie only felt a slight tremor under her feet. The basket had already left the ground. She poked her head out and saw Ashes and Molly waving at them. As the hot air balloon continued to rise, the scenery on the ground became smaller and smaller. Soon, the two of them turned into fingernail-sized specks. No matter what, a new life was about to begin. Vendi's ability seemed to be to control the wind. Under her control, the hot air balloon moved inland towards Grey Castle. It was Sylvie's first time looking down at the earth from the sky. Although the earth and rocks couldn't stop her from investigating, it was still a novel experience to have such a large field of vision in one go. She tried to summon the Eye of Magic, but she did not expect the chaotic scene to flood into her mind like a tide. The steep rock wall hidden in the depths of the sea, the underground river connected to the sea, the animal skeletons buried in the soil, and the changes in the underground rock stratum. These scenes suddenly gave Sylvie a splitting headache, and the magic power in her body rapidly decreased. She quickly interrupted the magic eyes and leaned against the side of the basket, gasping for breath. Are you okay? Someone asked. She opened her eyes and found that the other person was Vendi. Well, I'm just a little dizzy. Taking a few deep breaths will make you feel better, Vendi said with a smile. Many people feel uncomfortable when they leave the earth for the first time. Thank you, I'm feeling better, Sylvie nodded. The atmosphere along the way was much more harmonious than she had initially expected. Just like Ashes had said, Vendi was full of concern for everyone, and would not treat them differently just because they were newcomers. Although Anna didn't speak much, as long as someone asked her a question, she would still answer seriously. Lightning seemed to be very close to Maggie, and her personality was also very lively. From time to time, she would fly into the basket with the fat pigeon and chat with everyone, completely not treating herself as a stranger. With Maggie acting as the link between the two sides, the other four people gradually relaxed, and one after another, they asked Lightning about the situation in Border Town. Later, the little girl simply hovered next to the basket, and told everyone the story of the town's resistance against the demonic beasts and invaders, as well as His Royal Highness' incredible inventions, which made everyone stunned. It didn't take long before the hot air balloon arrived above the castle. Just by looking at its size, the town really deserved to be called a border town. It was both narrow and remote, and its size was less than a third of Sleeping Island's. However, there were a lot of townspeople, whether it was in the central square, the periphery of the city walls, or the riverbank, you could see groups of people everywhere. They ran back and forth, converging into a surging stream. The hot air balloon landed directly in the castle courtyard, and just as they stepped out of the basket, a burst of roars suddenly sounded. Caught off guard, Sylvie was startled, and for a moment she froze in place. The other four people weren't any better. Honey even went back into the basket, and with half of her head sticking out, she asked, "What happened?" Vendi couldn't help but laugh. "Don't worry, this is His Royal Highness playing a cannon salute to welcome your arrival." Passing through the shady corridors, they entered the castle hall, where Sylvie finally saw Tilly's brother. He was sitting on the main seat in the hall, and his appearance was somewhat similar to Her Royal Highness the Fifth Princess, with the same grey hair, no extra pendants on his body, and a relaxed and natural expression on his face. Although his face was far less pleasing to the eye than Lady Tilly's, but he had a calm temperament, and just by sitting there he was able to attract everyone's attention. "Welcome to Border Town. I am the Lord of the Western Territory, Roland Wimbledon. Presumably you already know my name." He got up and said with a smile, "Tilly Wimbledon is my sister, so you don't need to feel restrained, just think of this town as Sleeping Island." Sylvie couldn't help but open her magic eyes, and then she couldn't help but be startled. The expected darkness didn't appear, the opposite party unexpectedly didn't wear a god's stone of retaliation, and there was also no trace of magic activity on his body. His original appearance, under the true sight, was still the same. It was neither a disguise, nor was he being controlled, which could only mean that the man in front of her was Roland himself. And in the countermeasures that Lady Tilly had given her, there was only one sentence for this kind of situation: send the news back to Sleeping Island. What Roland said next, she didn't listen at all, her mind was a mess. In order to complete the task entrusted to her by Lady Tilly, she even thought of the words and expressions to use when negotiating, and even prepared to be imprisoned, but the result was that it didn't come in handy. Now, she just had to wait until the end of the month, and let Maggie bring the information back, and then the task would be completed. But how is this possible? A real noble, actually determined to shelter a witch? And also become the leader of the Witch Cooperation Association. The psychological gap made Sylvie a little absent-minded, until His Royal Highness arranged a room for her to sleep in for the night. She came back to her senses. The situation is roughly like this: the witch house has not yet been completed, so you can only temporarily live in the castle, sharing a room with other witches. Of course, this will also make it easier for you to quickly integrate into the life of Border Town. Roland said, "Tonight there will be a sumptuous dinner waiting for you, as an official welcome to Border Town, enjoy it." The result of the room allocation made Sylvie feel relieved. She was finally arranged to live together with Vendi. From this short contact, Vendi was indeed a good senior, so it should be easier to get along with her. But in addition to her, there seemed to be a witch called Nightingale living in the room. Chapter 258. Since the arrival of the 5 Sleeping Island witches in Border Town, Roland had been in a state of excitement. After the banquet, he found himself lying in bed unable to fall asleep, so he got up and drank half a glass of white wine to force his body to fall asleep. The next day, when the summer cicadas in the courtyard began to make a yaw sound, he had already regained consciousness. He climbed out of bed in high spirits, and after a simple wash, he walked into the office. At this time, the sky had just turned white, and the first ray of dawn was evenly sprinkled through the floor-to-ceiling windows into the room. Roland looked around, but did not see the familiar figure of the past. Usually, when he opened the door, he would always see Nightingale lying on a chair with a lazy look. He could not help but smile, sat at the table, took out a notebook from the drawer, and began to plan the next witch's training plan. Helping the newcomers to familiarize themselves with the environment and integrate into the group would naturally be handled by Vendi, Scroll, and the others. What he needed to do was to launch a sugar-coated attack, so that the visiting witches could enjoy the unique comfort of this place. It was not necessary to make the other party stay in Border Town to be successful. Even if they went back, it would also be an excellent advertisement for his territory. When the sun completely rose, Nightingale finally appeared in the office. "Oh. You got up very early today. Is it really as Lily said, that you can't restrain yourself from the new witches? What nonsense are you talking about?" Roland smiled and put a bag of dried fish on the table. "How did you get along with the new sisters last night?" "Sisters?" She curled her lips. "Don't trust them too much." "What's wrong?" Nightingale reached out and hooked the bag, then turned around and sat back on the recliner. The witch named Sylvie, half of her 10 sentences were lies. Although it was not serious to the point of harboring evil intentions, she definitely had a lot of hidden intentions. "Well, it's understandable," Roland said carelessly. "She probably wanted to see if I was really Roland Wimbledon." "What?" Nightingale was slightly startled. "If your relative's personality had changed drastically, you would definitely wonder if he had been replaced or controlled, right?" He laughed and said, "I guess that's how Tilly sees me. In King's City, I'm famous for idling around, being ignorant and incompetent, bullying the good and fearing the evil. How could I possibly stand up and protect a witch?" In fact, it was not an exaggeration to say that Prince Roland was a terrible person. In his childhood memory, Prince Roland accidentally broke a few crystal glass jars while playing in the palace. In order to avoid punishment, he not only pushed all the blame to Tilly Wimbledon, but also faked the scene and threw his 6 or 7-year-old sister into the glass shards. With such a dark history, it would be strange if others did not have a deep impression of him. It was normal for them to suspect that their elder brother, who had undergone a huge change in temperament, was no longer the same person. Anyone would want to investigate. "I want to know, too," Nightingale asked curiously. "Are you really Roland Wimbledon?" "I am, and I'm not." Roland spread his hands. She suddenly froze. "Why does my ability tell me that this sentence is true?" "Because it's the truth." Nightingale's ability could only distinguish deliberate lies, but he didn't think that he was lying. She frowned and thought for a long time. Finally, she held her forehead and decided to give up thinking. "Forget it, I'll just ask Anna later. No matter what, as long as you're the Roland I'm familiar with, it's fine. Of course, from the moment I met you, I've always been me." Roland smiled. After breakfast, the 5 witches of Sleeping Island were brought to the office by Vendy. "Good morning, Your Highness." The 5 witches bowed their heads and saluted. "Relax, I'm not a person who pays much attention to etiquette. You can call me the same way you call Tilly." Roland waved his hand. "For the first week, I won't arrange any work for you. The main thing is to familiarize yourself with the town's environment and life. You can visit Border Town at will. No one will speak ill of you because you're witches, nor will they try to catch you in exchange for rewards. I've already eradicated the church's influence from the western region, so this place is the same as Sleeping Island, a land of freedom. I think you should all know the reason for the magic bite, so you can't neglect the necessary practice. There are no restrictions during the day, as long as you don't forget to come back for lunch. After dinner, there will be primary education classes, including literacy, reading and writing, as well as simple mathematics and natural knowledge. Tilly may have mentioned to you that witches can be further strengthened on the day of adulthood, so it's very necessary to master this knowledge. If you're interested, you can come and listen to the classes with the witches of Border Town. In addition, you'll get a golden dragon as a monthly reward, as well as weekends and paid leave. If you don't understand, you can ask Vendy. In short, your daily life is the same as that of the Witch Union. Sleeping Island is the home of witches, and Border Town is the same. Roland paused. "Then let's test our abilities first. Tilly's description in the letter isn't very clear, so I want to see it with my own eyes. It's not convenient to do it here, so let's change to a more spacious place." "Please wait a moment, Your Highness, I still have something to give you," Sylvie said. "What is it?" She opened the package in her hands and put a few yellowed parchments and a letter on the table. "Lady Tilly found these documents in the ruins of the fjords. She wants to ask you everything in this letter." Roland opened the envelope in doubt. The letter wasn't long, so he quickly read to the end, but the content of the letter set off a monstrous wave in his heart. An artificial stone island sleeping at the bottom of the sea, the unpredictable ebb and flow of the tide, a telescope that could still be used after hundreds of years, and a stone gate built on top of a cliff. It's simply incredible. How could there be such incredible ruins in the fjords? Moreover, Tilly's question at the end of the letter also made him feel numb. After glancing at the parchment, he found that the words were indeed somewhat familiar. "Quickly call Scroll," Roland ordered Nightingale. Scroll quickly rushed back from the city hall to the castle. When she summoned the Book of Magic, the prince couldn't help but frown. He saw that the holy book that Kara had brought out from the eastern forest ruins was actually written in the same language as the documents found in the fjord's ruins. Tilly's conjecture in the letter was confirmed. These ancient ruins were all created by the same group of people. If it was the church who built all of this, why did they abandon it all? And not only these magnificent buildings, but even the records of 450 years ago were completely erased. In the end, what were they trying to hide? Even the scorching summer sun couldn't make Roland feel a trace of warmth. He only felt a faint chill rising from the soles of his feet, gloomy and cold. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.